is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 386. My name is Marshall. I'm in Seattle. I never say that. I had somebody ask me at the pre-release, where do you live? I know Luis is in Denver. I'm in Seattle, and joining me from Denver, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how are you, sir? How goes?
I'm doing well. I was mentioning to you right before we started, we actually get to play with the cards before the set review this time, or at least before the Rare and Mythic one, because the set has been out on Magic Online for now 2 days.
2 days, which is about 5 or 6 drafts for me. How about you? You've been drafting it up?
Yeah. I've done 5 now. So
yeah. And I actually ended up doing 2 pre-releases. I was only going to do one, but Adam was like, let's go do another one. And I was like, all right, let's do that. So I did 2 pre-releases and 5 drafts. I've got my hands on quite a few of the cards so far, which is a nice thing to have.
Yeah, instead of, wild speculation, it's just medium speculation.
Of course, this episode of LR is the Amonkhet set review for Rare and Mythic Rare. We're going to be going over every single one of those today on the show, dissecting them, getting down into the nitty-gritty, and figuring out what are the bombs and what are the probably want to pass this one type cards in Amonkhet. Before we get into that, I want to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com, the place to go on the internet for everything you need Magic related. That's right. You can get singles, so anything you want from Amonkhet, go ahead and fire it off. And once it's able to ship, they will ship it to you. That's just in a few short days here. And you can pre-order sealed product too, if you'd like. And of course, anything else you want for getting a booster draft together with your friends, or maybe doing some heads up sealeds events, or whatever it is that you like to do to help get prepared for your tournaments. And while you're there, check out some of the awesome free content. I know Luis and I both have draft videos up on Channel Fireball already. You can get our early takes on the format. In fact, I got to put up my first Amonkhet draft, period. Just first one I ever did. It's up on the site there. And I'll probably regret that at some point. But for now, you can go watch it. And they're always for free. All that content is for free. Helps get you better at Magic. The same thing that you came here for. So please check them out. channelfireball.com. Also, the show is brought to you by you via the Patreon. That's right. If you want to support the show directly, you can do so. And boy, is Patreon a cool way to do it. You can head over there, patreon.com/limitedresources, and get signed up. It's super easy to get signed up, and you control everything. You get to decide how much you want to give, how often. You can put a monthly cap on it so you don't exceed any budgets or anything like that. And you get some cool free perks. And of course, we really appreciate each and every one of you for helping support Limited Resources, keeping it going and helping it grow. It means a lot to us. Okay, let's get right into it here. We've got the Rare and Mythic Rares. We're going to go over the grading system, why we do it, and how we do it, and then we're going to jump right into green for Amonkhet. So, Luis, walk us through the grading system real quick, just for people that haven't heard it before.
All right, we're going to do a letter grades. We start with A's. These are the bombs, the game winners, cards that are good in many situations, especially when behind, and the best cards in the set, as well as hyper-efficient spells. Given that this is the Rare and Mythic reviews, we're actually going to see quite a few A's.
I would give you an A.
Well, is it because I'm good when you're behind, or am I hyper efficient?
No, it's you crush all 4 quadrants in the quadrant 3. That's why.
There we go. But because it's the Rare and Mythic review, you're going to see a lot more A's than you did in the Common Uncommon review. And cards like that get A's in the past are like Angel of Invention, Noxious Gearhulk, Sky Sovereign, Console Flagship.
Yep.
B's are cards that actively pull you towards our colors. These are the headliners for a set, go-to cards, and reasons to be in a specific color, clan, or guild, as well as solid removal. So these are cards like Essence Extraction, Welding Sparks, Oval Chase Daredevil, and Aerial Responder. These are the cards that when you first pick them, you're not unhappy. When you third pick them, you're pretty happy.
Sometimes they even pull you into a color in the second pack.
Right. C's are playables. These are the pawns of limited. They're fairly interchangeable. You're going to have some amount of C's in your deck every time. And this is where, normal creatures, mediocre removal, combat tricks go. Cards like Aviary Mechanic, Ether Tradewinds, Foundry Screecher, and Spider-Side Infiltrator. Mm-hmm. Not a ton of C's in the rares.
No, they tend to be more polarized.
Right. So now we're moving towards the D's. These are the sometimes playable, would prefer not to run them cards, mediocre and junky, situational with a high setup cost. Cards like Herald of the Fair, High Tide Hermit, Dukara Scavenger, Cowl Prowler. Another note is a lot of the cards that would have gotten Ds get cycling in this set, so you're not going to see as many Ds as you would either. Destroy Target Artifact with cycling is a very different card than Destroy Target Artifact.
Right.
And lastly, we have Fs, unplayable in virtually all scenarios, incredibly narrow cards or cards with super rough mana costs. Cards like Dramatic Reversal, Lost Legacy, and Dubious Challenge. 2 of those cards are rares. You're going to see a lot more rares in the F category than you would common uncommons as well. These are where the constructed build around cards like, Lost Legacy go that just have no merit being in your limited deck. And then lastly, we have 2 subcategories. We have sideboard cards that rarely, if ever, make the main deck, but can be very powerful out of the sideboard. And we do give them a grade, but they are a card that we will mention are sideboard material. Not a whole lot of these in the rare category either. And then build around. These are cards that don't do much on their own, but if you properly build around them, they can be great. You do see some rares here. Cards like Panharmonicon, Aetherflux Reservoir, Dynavolt Tower.
Right. Okay. So, should we get into green?
Yeah, let's start with green.
We should mention why we do the grades real quick, too.
Yes, of course. So the grades are not the end-all be-all, especially when it comes to these like weird rares and complicated cards.
Oh yeah.
Some of them, if we're like Glorybringer, spoiler, gets an A+. if you just talk about that card and you're just like A+, you could just look at the grade and you wouldn't really need to know much more. But for a lot of these cards, what we say about the card is a lot more important than just the grade. The grade just kind of lets you, put a punctuation mark on it and see relative to other cards how it ends up. But the grades are not the only thing you should look at.
That's right. And you should listen closely to our discussion, which we're going to start right now. We're starting with green. We rotate which color we start with. We're on green here, and that puts us at Champion of Ronas, and that is 3 and a green for a 3/3 Jackal Warrior. So we call these Hill Giants, the 4-mana 3/3s. Of course, these days in Limited, Hill Giant is roughly playable, but we really do expect a bit more from our cards. So let's see what this one gives us. You may exert it when it attacks. If you do, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Just boom. You just get to put a card into play for free, basically. Huh. That is powerful. I have had a chance to play with this card, by the way, and I have put the Greatest Sandworm into play off of Champion of Ronas, and it felt busted. It was like, this is just stupid.
So what's interesting about Champion of Ronas is it's gonna have the busted moments where you slam a Colossopede or a Greater Sandworm into play on turn 4. But it doesn't really have the fail cases because it's a 4-mana 3/3, which doesn't really fail. It's just going to be a fine card.
Yeah, it's just close enough to be like, sure.
And even putting like a 3-drop in play on turn 7, that's still 3 free mana.
Yep.
Like it's still relevant that you get to use your mana for other things, especially in this format. I mean, as you no doubt have seen, your mana is pretty taxed with all the cycling cards.
Yes,
you just
for sure.
frequently run out of mana to do things. So I think Champion of Ronas is like, the high end is really, really high. If you put a 6-drop into play on turn 4 or turn 5, you're just going to win. And the low end is still pretty high, as in it's just a 4-mana 3/3 with minor upside. So I don't think it's a bomb, but I think it's like a B+.
I have Champion of Ronas at B+ also. After having played it, it just feels like a free roll, and that's a great place to be. Easy to cast, doesn't ask much of you. You're going to have a lot of creatures. So B+ for Champion of Ronas. Good card. A lot of times these type of cards don't live up. Elvish Pipers, I think is what the old version. But this one, like, just good stats, good attacks, get it in there. Next, we've got Channeler Initiate. This is 1 and a green for a 3/4 human druid at rare. When it enters the battlefield, you put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. So assuming that you don't have anything out, you play this on turn 2 and you've got an 0/1. But it says tap it and remove a -1/-1 counter from Channeler Initiate and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So this thing comes down as an 0/1, but you can start removing counters right away, and it ramps you and fixes your mana for just 2. I like this card a lot.
Yeah, this card is really, really good. This early game, it's great because it's a 2-mana ramp spell in a format, again, that's pretty mana hungry, and it ramps you to 4 and 5. You can start playing your Colossopeds earlier. Mm-hmm. Late game, it's not just a mana dork. It's a mana dork that grows into a 3/4 when a mana dork would be dead. Also, the fact that when you play it on turn 2, you have a 3/4 a couple turns later ready to bash is not irrelevant. So
not at all.
I think Channel Initiate is just, again, it's actually a lot like Champion of Ronas, where the high end is really high. When you play this on turn 2, it feels unfair. You end up with a 3/4 and you got 3 mana out of it. And later in the game, it's still a 3/4, which, costing 2 is also relevant. Also generates -1/-1 counters for that deck. So I actually have them about the same grade. I think Channeler Initiate is also a B+.
Yeah, I do too. I actually gave Channeler Initiate a B because if you do play it later, it's pretty slow and it's not quite as good. But whatever, they're in the same range. I'll go B+ on Channeler Initiate because it is just excellent on turn 2. Really, truly an excellent card. And what a cool design too. Like having it slowly get better and better in the late game while it loses its utility as a mana creature. That is just a neat design for Channeler Initiate. I like B+ on it as well. Let's see what we have next here. We've got Harvest Season. This was in my first pre-release. I got this as my promo, and I opened one too. So we'll see what it does. 2 and a green for a sorcery. It's rare. It says search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of tapped creatures you control. You put those onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. I tried. I was like doing backflips in my head when I was putting this build together, and I just ended up cutting them both. I'm like, this just isn't a thing I want to do. I recognized that I could turn this thing into a pretty sizable ramp spell, but only after I already had 4 or 5 mana on the battlefield. And I'm kind of like, well, what am I, what am I using a double or triple giant rampant growth for here? What's my big payoff? And I don't know, I had some creatures that were maybe, a sandworm or something, but it wasn't anything really great. So I ended up not playing my Harvest Seasons, and I don't think it's a great card.
No, I think Harvest Season's an F.
Yeah.
It's terrible when you're behind, and when you're ahead, you don't need it. There's no real configuration where I think this card's going to be good. So
I think so too. It sucks because it just doesn't work the way you want it to. So F for Harvest Season. Now this next card, Honored Hydra, this is not an F. This is a much, much higher grade. It's 5 and a green for a 6/6 Trample Snake Hydra at rare. But here's the trick. It's got Embalm, and which, by the way, I don't really care what the Embalm, like if it's 8 mana, this card is still fine. The Embalm cost is actually 3 and a green, which makes it really interesting because it's a 6-drop that's a 6/6 with Trample, which is pretty good. Then the Embalm cost is so much cheaper, which makes, in my mind, it just makes me want to try to discard the thing and play it on turn 4 as a 6/6 Trample.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be doing too much of that, though. That is like a cute combo, Miasmic Mummy or something, and then just get in there. But a 6-mana 6/6 Trample is already like something you're like kind of interested in, and the fact that it has Embalm means just like a huge threat that's pretty hard to deal with. A lot of the removal in the set is just not going to, first of all, be able to touch it to begin with, and second, if they do manage to take it down, unless they're using like Cast Out or Final Reward, they're really not dealing with it forever. I would say Honored Hydra is just, it's also splashable, if you pick up an Evolving Wilds or something. It's just a very powerful card. My guess is, though, it's not an A because it is a 6/6 Trample at its base, and like when you're behind, it still gets dealt with by a bounce spell or a removal spell for that turn. So I would say Honored Hydra's a B.
Yeah, I think so too. It might be a B+. It's somewhere in that range. It does die to the spells that you mentioned, kind of permanently, and then it also happens to die to what's it called, the red one, Deem Worthy. At least the first time. But whatever. I think the card's really, really, really good too. So I like B on Honored Hydra. Let's see. What is our next card? It looks like it's Prowling Serpapard. This is one of the first cards that was spoiled pretty early in the season. It's 1 green for a 4/3 cat snake that can't be countered. And it also has the additional ability, creature spells you control can't be countered. Now, we should vanilla test this first. What do you think about 1 GG for a 4/3?
I would always play that card.
It's good, right? That's overstated
good, yeah.
For 3 mana for sure, like significantly so.
Yeah, enough that that would be like a B- probably.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too. A B- is where I'd put it. Now, this does get kind of interesting because it has this extra text that almost never comes up in limited. This seems more like a constructed type thing. It can't be countered, and it makes it so your creatures can't be countered. But I have to say, Essence Scatter is in this format, as is Cancel, and people do play them, at least from what I've seen so far. So it is some amount of upside, even if it isn't like a game breaker.
Also, Censor is a very,
and Censor too,
relevant too. So it's a bonus text. I actually still think it gets a B-, but you just have to know that there's like a little bonus attached.
Yeah, I think the key is to not focus too much on that part and just look at the stats. 3 mana, 4/3. That's what you're really getting, and you just get this little upside. But pretty good card. B- for Prowling Serpapard. What about Ronus the Indomitable? This thing's just a house.
Ronus is a 2 and a green for a legendary god at Mythic Rare. 5/5, Death Touch, indestructible. Ronus can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater, and you can spend 2 and a green to give another target creature +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. So
I'm in love.
3 mana for Death Touch indestructible 5/5, but you have to have a 4-power creature in play in order for Ronus to, Ronus is kind of lazy, doesn't get up unless there's someone,
That's how
big
you
and strong to do part of the work.
I think he's just lonely. He wants somebody
yes.
of his stature,
Right. You can pay 2 and a green to give a creature +2/+0, another creature +2/+0 and trample, which of course makes any 2-power creature strong enough for Ronus to, get off his I guess, tail, since he's a snake god of some kind.
Yes,
I think Ronus is great. This is actually one I've actually had direct experience with, and
by playing with or against.
with.
Okay.
And Ronus is very good. Just any 2-power creature and 3 mana means Ronus is active, threatens to do a ton of damage. Also, just once you have 6 mana or so, blocking is really hard for your opponent because you can always just pump your 2/2 into a 6/2, with trample as well. And you're just not paying much for this effect. It's 2 good effects that really come together. A really cheap 5/5 and a global power pumping effect, if you have enough mana. So I think Ronus is great. I think I'd give Ronus an A-.
Yeah, I've played against this card as well, have yet to play with it, and it has had a huge effect on the board each time. Even if they had to just stay back, it's so difficult to deal with an indestructible creature that they would be like, go. And if I wanted to attack, I would be like, okay, well, try to kill something. And if I can't, then the thing just gets to sit there. If they have 2/2/2s, it's just like you just don't get to attack anymore. And God forbid they start attacking you because, you don't last too long. I like A- on Ronus as well. All right, this next one's been really interesting. I've had sometimes the pleasure, sometimes the displeasure to play against Sandworm Convergence multiple times. It's 8 mana. It is 6 green for an enchantment. And it has 2 lines of text. The first one says, creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, which feels weird. It's kind of a throwaway line, but it actually does matter. And then the other one, and this is the important part, at the beginning of your end step, you get a 5/5 green worm creature token every turn. 8 mana for this thing.
It basically protects you in the air and then protects you on the ground because you're getting a 5/5 starting the turn you play this. Because remember, it's the end of your turn. And this is straight out of Dune too. Like you can't tell me it's not.
Dude, this card's really powerful. I wrote it off when I first saw it, but every time I've seen it down, and that really is the question here, it's been absurd. It's been completely absurd.
It is worth 8 mana. Well, sometimes you look at 8 drops, 8 mana, 9/9 trample. You're like, well, that's just not going to be good enough because if they can bounce it or deal with it, this card is very hard to deal with that way. And because it stops flyers, if you just have some random ground dorks, then playing Sandworm Conversions already protects you, even if they can deal with the 5/5 worm. So I think as far as 8 mana spells go, this is good. It almost gets to build around category to me, just because you can't put an 8 mana spell in a normal deck and just be like, yeah, I'm going to cast this card. So
yeah, that's true.
My guess is Sandworm Conversion is a good card if you can get build a control deck around it, a deck with some mana ramp, maybe some Naga Vitalists and whatnot. I would say I would give it like a build around B in that case, because I think you do want a deck geared towards casting an 8 mana spell, but this is a very good reward once you do.
Can I give it a build around A, or is it still just 8 mana and that's just too much?
It's still 8 mana. Sometimes you just don't get to 8.
Yeah, you just don't get to 8, even if you do build around it. And there's lots of ramp in the format to do so. Plenty of it. There's the 1-drop, there's the 2-drop that you mentioned, there's the 3-drop enchantment, and there's the Shafet Monitor. So you really do have a lot of ways to get a ton of mana, and it does basically win you the game when it sticks. I'm going to go build around B+.
All right, that's
for
fair.
Sandworm Convergence. I think the card's really great. It's crazy, but I do think it's really great. All right, next is Vizier of the Menagerie. This is 3 and a green for a 3/4 Naga Cleric, which I'm already fine with. It's a mythic rare. It says, you may look at the top card of your library. You can do that at any time. And don't get that twisted. That's not reveal. You don't have to show your opponent. You just get to look at it. You may cast the top card of your library if it's a creature card. And you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast creature spells.
So a pretty powerful card. One of the things I like so much about this card is that it's a 4 mana 3/4. So yes, it looks like Oracle of Moldiah, right? Which was a fantastic card. And I think the ability of this card is a little less powerful. But the fact that it's a 4 mana 3/4 is, again, you're just not paying for this. You would put 3 and a green 3/4 in your deck a lot of the time and just be satisfied with that. And what this does is it just draws you an extra card every time there's a creature on top of your deck that you can cast.
Yeah.
And that you want to cast. Rarely are you going to skip casting a creature, but sometimes you'll have 6 mana. There'll be a 2-drop on top, and you'll have a 6-drop in your hand, and you can't really just take a turn off to get that extra card.
Right.
But in general, you'll be casting cards when you can. Also note your opponent doesn't see your top card, only you do.
Right. Yeah,
So.
I said that. The other thing to consider too is that, you know, if you've ever played with Future Sight, you'll kind of have that light bulb moment where you're like, oh, so, you know, let's say you've got 6 mana and you look at the top card of your library and it's a 2-drop and you cast it. Well, look at the next one. It might be a 4-drop or another 2-drop or whatever, and you can just keep churning through your library for as much mana as you have. I mean, Vizier of the Menagerie is the type of card that has no downside whatsoever. It's just a good card as a 3/4 for 4 that you're happy with. I mean, there's one in red that costs double red and has no text whatsoever, and that sometimes makes the cut. This thing is just like, you know, 10 times better than that. I would give it an A-, and not for overt power level. Like, it's not the type of card that hits and you're just like, well, now I can never win. But it has such a high floor and a really nice high ceiling too. Good when you cast it, good late in the game, good really late in the game. And I just think that for efficiency reasons, I actually give Vizier of the Menagerie an A-. I think it's a great card.
I like Vizier of the Menagerie at A- as well, just because it's beefy. It'll draw you an extra card, you know, every couple turns or more, even if the game goes long. And in like a 20 creature deck, which sometimes you can have in this format, it can be really good.
Yeah.
Another thing to note is, like, let's say you have like 7 or 8 mana, right? Your top card's a land. Well, you can cycle a card and try to hit a creature on top. Cycling is a combo with this. So
yeah, shuffles. I like that.
Yeah, it is pretty nice.
Right. So A- for Vizier of the Menagerie. Okay. That leaves us with our last green card. It's called Mouth to Feed. This card's actually really good. It's 2 and a green for a sorcery on the top part. Of course, anytime we have this type of card, this is an aftermath card. So the mouth is the first part, which, by the way, just sounds so fun. I cast mouth. Like, oh, turn 3, I mouthed. You know, it's like, what? Anyway, you get a 3/3 green hippo creature token. So 3 mana, 3/3, I'm in. Like, that's already a fine card. And then Feed, which is the aftermath side, is a sorcery. And it's 3 and a green. It says, draw a card for each creature you control with power 3 or greater.
Yeah, this card's great. 2 and a green for a 3/3 is already a good deal. And you can draw 1 or more cards even afterwards, depending on what your deck looks like. I don't think this card's a bomb, but I think
it's like a B, right?
Play. I would even say B+.
B+, yeah.
A 3 mana 3/3 with like reasonable upside is good.
Yeah, 3 mana 3/3 with slow draw a card, but late in the game maybe you draw 2 or 3. Yeah, B+ for Mouth to Feed. I like these rares out of green a lot. I just like green in general.
No, like windmill, like, you know, just ham slam, you know, A+s, but a lot of like B+ to A- level cards, which just, you know, a lot of cards you're satisfied taking early. Speaking of ham slams, we're going to start with Angel of Sanctions when it comes to white.
Yes.
And this is 3 white.
Would take.
For a 3/4 mythic angel. It is flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Angel of Sanction leaves the battlefield. So 5 mana 3/4 flying that exiles a non-land permanent, not even just a creature, any non-land permanent. This card would already be an A, like a flat A.
Just a straight up A.
It has Embalm of 5 and a white. If they can somehow deal with it, it just comes back. And maybe there's even a better target for it now. Also, when it exiles tokens, they just never come back. Angel of Sanctions is an A+. I think I have it as the second best card in the set.
Card's unbelievable.
Yeah. The card's just, I mean, we don't really have to go into more detail. The card is just insanely good.
Even the artwork's great. Angel of Sanctions.
It's a bomb that beats their bomb and has flashback. Yeah. So
A+. A+ for Angel of Sanctions. Never passed that one. What about Anointed Procession?
It's a 3 and a white. It's an enchantment at rare. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice as many tokens instead. So this is very clearly a build around. I mean, straight into the build around category. Yep. Basically, you get doubles on Embalm, and then like maybe some random like cartouche. You know, the white cartouche makes a 1 on a warrior. Like there's a couple random cards that make things.
Yeah, the monument makes them. There's some rares.
The white This looks to me like a build around, like probably like a D+.
Yeah.
It just
because you need these specific pieces, right?
So you need the specific
pieces.
Or
is Embalm enough? I don't know.
Embalm is expensive. And a lot of the Embalm creatures are kind of small. Like, paying 4 mana for this and then embalming like a 2/2 or a 3/2 Vigilance and getting another copy, you're already behind, right? You paid 4 mana for a 3/2 Vigilance that you had to wait multiple turns for. Mm-hmm. So you need to get like 3 creatures out of this before you're ahead usually, because at 2, I feel like I'm just at parity even. Like I paid 4 mana and waited a bunch of turns to get two, like a 2/2 and a 3/2 or something along those lines. So I don't like Anointed Procession very much. I just don't think it's going to end up working out very often.
Woody did a test for us. He put 2 of them in a deck. It does double then double.
If you do want the card, you would want 2 of them, but it just still does not seem good enough to me.
No, I think so too. Build around D.
Yeah, I like Build Around D for Anointed Procession.
Speaking of,
I like this one. All right.
Speaking of doing some tests, I did a little test with. I first picked this in one of my drafts. In fact, it's going to go up on the website at some point.
Approach of the Second Sun is 6 and a white. It's a rare sorcery. If Approach of the Second Suns was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. So 7 mana, and it says if you cast this card already, you win the game. Otherwise, put Approach of the Second Sun into its owner's library, 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. So 7 mana, gain 7, that says in 7 turns you win the game. There are a lot of ways to get around that 7-turn barrier, like cycling is the most common way. Every card you cycle gets you a turn closer. There's cards like Trial of Knowledge, draw 3, discard 1. I had a game where I thought I could never lose. I went Glorybringer into the Archfiend of Ykrit.
Mm-hmm.
And my opponent was just playing this like dirtily Bant deck, and it goes like, compulsory rest, your Glorybringer, cast Approach from the Second Sun, cast Trial of Knowledge, cycle twice, you're dead. I'm like, okay, I guess like good beats, I guess.
That's awesome.
I actually think this is it's a build around. I don't think you can just
total
slot this in the
build
deck,
around. Yep.
But I actually think it's a build around A. I am impressed by this card.
Okay.
Like
I was going to give it a build around B, and I thought I was being generous.
I've seen it in 2 matches. It's the win condition your dirtily controlled decks want.
It is.
Because it gets you 7 life and puts them on a basically unstoppable clock unless they have a counterspell. Like, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, and there's and only cancel actually hits this outside of Censor. So
Censor probably gets there.
Well, I'm saying
actually,
once
it may
it's
not.
in
If you cast it the first time, then
that's what I'm saying. There's no way. Yeah. Also, one thing I really appreciated about it is that it's 6 in a white and not 5 double white, because I did not play this in a white deck. I played it in a green something deck. I can't remember, but it's an easy splash, right? It's an easy just one off. You've got your whatever, your Evolving Wilds, your Shafet Monitor or whatever, and you don't need to cast this on turn 7, or very rarely do you need to. So I gave it a build around B. I was actually kind of impressed by it. I don't think it's a great card, but like I was like, hey, this is a viable way to approach winning the game, and it's very difficult to interact with. Just don't mill yourself.
No, don't mill yourself. Make sure you have a couple ways to draw cards, whether it is cycling or the blue cartouche or trial or what have you, Watchful Naga. There's like a bunch of different ways that draw cards, because each one is essentially a turn off. The hieroglyphics, the draw 2 with cycling, for example, fits nicely either side. So I think that this card is very much worth building around. Maybe A is aggressive, but it feels like a deck full of this card, a bunch of card draw and removal will just do very well.
Okay. I got build around B, you got build around A. Approach of the Second Sun. Let's move on to Aven Mind Sensor 2 and a white for a 2/1 Bird Wizard at Rare. It's got flash, flying, and if an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead.
So this card is basically 2 and a white for a 2/1 flying flash, which is playable. Not exciting, but definitely playable. The searching library part, what do you're hosing their Evolving Wilds, I guess? Yes,
Evolving Wilds, the Shafet Monitor I keep mentioning. There's a few other cards it gets, but it's pretty narrow. It's not the type of thing where you're, routinely going to be just screwing your opponent over on some important effect. But in my mind, like you said, it's a 2/1 flying flash for 3 that has this kind of niche upside that comes up every once in a while. I like it. I think that's a fine card. It's like probably a C+.
I would give it a C+ as well. I think that it can throw off combat math. There's also a lot of reasons to leave up mana, and getting to play Mind Sensor end of turn if they don't run into your Censor or cancel is kind of nice.
Yeah. Okay. Let's we'll give C+ on Aven Mind Sensor. What is the next card? It looks like it's Gideon.
Gideon of the Trials is 1 white for Gideon Planeswalker, of course, at Mythic Rare. Starts with 3 loyalty. It says +1 until your next turn. Prevent all damage target permanent would deal. 0, Gideon becomes a 4/4 human soldier with indestructible until end of turn. And 0, you get an emblem with as long as you control a Gideon Planeswalker, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game.
Really cool card. I had a chance to play with this at the pre-release, and I got to cast it a bunch of times too. My deck was more controlling. I think I only attacked with him once, but sitting there and basically turning one of their creatures into kind of nothing is really strong. And I even used the emblem a few times after I got Gideon up to like 12 or 9 or whatever loyalty, where he's just sitting there keeping their best creature at bay over and over and over again. And then it's kind of like gaining that much life in a way, because they have to try to get rid of Gideon if they're going to try to win the game. They can't just decide, okay, I'm just going to attack everything at you, because you just simply don't lose the game. As long as you still got Gideon around. And then when it does come time to beat down, I mean, he hits super hard. Like I was hoping for one of those draws where I could just be like, activate Gideon, attack you, where my opponent stumbled or didn't have anything really good. But each time my deck played out more controlling. But I found Gideon very, very powerful. It wasn't over the top.
No, I don't think
it felt reasonable. Like my opponent wasn't just like, well, the game's over. Like, because you're normally working your way up to some big ultimate, and I was able to get a lot of loyalty on Gideon, but there's no, it just keeps going. You can eventually make the emblem if you want, but I like it. It was a really powerful card.
The emblem seems like mostly flavor text, because like you said,
I only did
it
it once. Life. Yeah, I only did it once. Otherwise, I just plussed Gideon forever.
Yeah, I think that you're going to end up using the +1 a bunch, and then if the board is like stable enough, you can maybe start clocking them for 4. But there aren't very many situations in limited where they could kill you but can't kill Gideon. It's mostly like you said, if they have a flyer, maybe you need to make an emblem just so they have to like hit Gideon for 5 before they come after you.
Yeah. The interesting thing is loyalty being only 3 when you play Gideon. If you do want to start attacking, he starts attacking basically with 4 loyalty. But I found that the play pattern sort of encourages you to just keep plussing Gideon, because attacking into any type of reasonable board state will usually leave Gideon pretty vulnerable, and at only 4 loyalty, it doesn't take much to get him dead. Any type of reasonable curve out plus like a pump spell or removal spell will kill Gideon. So you're more incentivized to just keep plussing him, I found.
Yeah, I think that's going to end up being the case. My guess is Gideon is good, but again, like you said, not over the top. What would you give it?
I would give him a B+ based on my experience with him. It's a solid card. I would always first pick it. I would always play it. I'm really happy to get one, but it just wasn't the type of Planeswalker where you're just like, I can never lose. It does, it plays nicely, actually. I think it's about where it should be for a 3-mana Planeswalker.
Yeah, that looks like a B+ for me.
All right. Gideon's Intervention is 2 white for an enchantment at rare. As Gideon's Intervention enters the battlefield, choose a card name. Your opponents can't cast spells with the chosen name, and prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and permanents you control by sources of the chosen name. So those first 2 lines of text are the type of card that we don't normally like in Limited, the ones that prevent your opponents from casting certain spells. Sometimes they don't draw the card, and you're just sitting there playing a card that doesn't do anything. But does that last line of text change it for you? Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and permanents you control by sources of the chosen name, because you can actually pick something that's already on the battlefield.
Right. What most commonly this is going to be is essentially like, you choose a creature that your opponent controls and it can't attack. Like you name Colossipede, they have a Colossipede in play and it can't attack. And I guess when it blocks, you could still kill it.
You can, yeah.
But if it's big enough, it won't happen. But it'll just be like a wall. Like you could attack your 2/2/2s into their Colossipede and it would be fine.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a bad pacifism.
It's really bad pacifism, though.
Yeah. If you're an all flyers deck, it gets a lot better, because then you just name a ground creature and it just is a pacifism.
Mm-hmm.
But it also costs 4 mana. Sometimes it snipes them because they have 2 copies of the card, if it's like a common or something.
Sure. You name the one on the battlefield, they draw their other copy or whatever.
Yeah, I think if you're a deck with evasion, you would always play this, or big creatures, you'd always play this. If you're like a small aggressive deck, you would not want to play this. So that sounds like a C to me.
It sounds like a C to me as well. It reminds me of Captured by the Consulate. Looks kind of good, but then like when you actually break it down, you're like, maybe not so much. Let's look at Glory Bound Initiate. This is a 1 and a white for a 3/1 human warrior. So not bad. 2 mana 3/1s hit pretty hard. But it's also got Exert. When it attacks, you can exert it. If you do, it gets +1/+3 and lifelink until end of turn. That is a beater.
Yeah, Glory Bound Initiate's real nice. It's probably going to have to exert pretty frequently when
basically
it attacks.
Every time, yeah.
Because unless they don't have a blocker, it will die. But a 2 mana creature that attacks for 4 points of lifelink on turns 3, 5, and 7 is very, very good. Especially if you have any untapped tricks or anything like that. So I mean, it's not a bomb, but I think Glory Bound Initiate is a B minus.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially in a beatdown deck, it really shines in that setting. Okay, let's B minus for Glory Bound Initiate. Let's see, that puts us at Oketra the True. This is the mythic rare, of course. The god for white is Oketra. 3 and a white for a 3/6 legendary creature god with double strike and of course indestructible. Oketra the True can't attack or block unless you control at least 3 other creatures, but she can make them. 3 and a white to make a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. Thoughts on Oketra the True? Only 4 mana for that, by the way.
It is this god is interesting because it doesn't look like the activated is as powerful as some of the other gods. Paying 4 mana for a 1/1 is not great, but the trigger condition is not that hard either. You're going to have 3 creatures in play a lot of games of limited, and a 6/6 indestructible is a really big deal, or 3/6 double strike,
right?
Indestructible. So I'm not as high on Oketra as I was on like Ronus, for example.
I'm the same. Yeah, I've played against both of them, and Oketra was fine, but I was able to be the aggressor. And if my opponent chose to use the 4 mana to make a 1/1 white warrior, they were blocking with it. And that meant that Oketra, in the case that when I played against it, she never was able to attack or block because I just had the pressure and she doesn't do anything on her own, and it's too slow. Now, if the board's even remotely stalled out, or if you do just happen to have the creature, she's absurd. Yeah, then she just wins you the game. So I like Oketra the True a lot, but I don't think it's quite as good as Ronus. It's still great, though.
All the gods are going to be great.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would say like a B.
Okay.
I think you can lose a game with Oketra where you play Oketra and then you have 2 creatures in play and then they go like remove or bounce one of your creatures when you play the 3rd, and you just end up behind and never end up having her do enough. But like you said, any stalled game she's just going to win you. So I would say B is fine though for Oketra the True. Like worse than Cast Out.
That's Oketra.
Oketra. Even.
Yeah, the proper name of the female white-aligned god of solidarity. Guess what I'm reading? I like B+ for Oketra.
Something I do not want to be reading.
Well, you're going to have to listen to it before the Pro Tour. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I gave it B+. You said B. Whatever. Oketra's fantastic. This next card's really good too. Regal Caracal. What does this thing do?
It says 3 white for a 3/3 cat at rare. Other cats you control get +1/+1 and have lifelink. When Regal Caracal enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink.
Damn.
So, yeah, there's a cloud cat ranger.
Yeah, meow. This card's really good, man.
5 mana for a 3/3 and you get 2/2 lifelinks. Those keep lifelink even if your opponent kills the 3/3 because they naturally have it.
Yeah. And
any sacred cats you have lying around also get +1/+1 and lifelink.
Today I saw another Regal Caracal on the table. that was bad. They pump each other, by the way.
Oh yeah, that seems like a
it was cloned to be fair, but still, I mean, this is 7 power for 5 mana, 4 of which has lifelink, and it's spread out over 3 creatures. This card is just pushed.
Yeah, this card's very good. Good in your behind, good in your head, and of course, good at parity. You're doing no work. You're just paying 5 mana, and you're getting a bunch of stats and spread across a bunch of creatures. If you have bounce or raised dead effects, it gets even better. So,
for me, Regal Caracal's an A.
Yeah, it just seems like a flat A.
Yeah.
There's no complaints here, and the lifelink means that like this is a really good card if you're behind and you're like trying to race or something or stabilize. Like
yes, and you know how much I love cards that are good when you're behind. Oh man, so yeah, Regal Caracal gets an A. What a powerful card that is. Okay, what is our next card here?
Looks like Dusk to Dawn to me.
Oh yeah, so what does that one do?
So it's a card with Aftermath. So the front side Dusk is 2 white sorcery, destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. That's a very good card.
How good is it? That's really good, right?
I would almost always put this into my deck, especially since knowing this card is in my deck impacts my decisions during the draft and how I play a game.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dawn is 3 white sorcery with Aftermath, so you cast it from your graveyard. Return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. So the kind of deck that wants Dusk also wants Dawn, usually. And Dusk is just a really powerful card. it can wipe out 2 or 3 of your opponent's creatures pretty easily. And even just killing one of their creatures and none of yours is still good. You're still paying 4 mana to kill a big creature.
Yeah,
So,
and that's much more much more important side, of course. The Dawn is fine, but it's 5 mana. You're getting back your smaller creatures that are usually less good in the late game, and then you have to basically wait till the next turn to start playing them again. That's fine. I mean, I'll take it, but Dusk is really where my eyes go when it comes to this card.
yeah, I have no complaints about this card. It doesn't go into every single deck, which is the only reason it wouldn't get an A. I think it is an A minus, though.
You do think it's an A minus? Okay, I'll go A minus.
I think the card is just going to be really
grading
powerful.
it, but okay.
I've had Dusk cast against me, and just like, you have a Horror of the Broken Lands and like, Hyena pack out, and you're just not thinking about a card like this. This rare is just going to kill those 2 and leave their 2/2 alive.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. Yeah, of course it lets you play around it by still developing your board with your smaller creatures and then getting their greatest sandworms. White's powerful, man. That Angel's just completely off the charts.
It just gets an A+ and an A, and that's already puts it ahead of almost everything else.
Yeah. Well, those bombs are legit. Let's move on to blue, and we'll start with As Foretold. It's 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It's mythic. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on As Foretold. On each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. Can I give this an F?
I think you can.
It just seems awful.
Basically, if you play it on turn 3, you might get a card worth out of it because you're just like efficiently playing spells every turn with it. But
then honestly, you're just even.
You still spent a card. You're still down a card. You generated mana maybe.
Yeah.
But if you imagine drawing this on turn 7 or something, it's just heinously bad. So
yeah, As Foretold.
I think As Foretold is just an F.
As F. All right, let's go to
Curator of Mysteries.
Oh god, this one's nice.
Yeah, it's 2 blue. It's a rare Sphinx. It's a 4/4 flyer. It says whenever you cycle or discard another card, scry 1, and it has cycling of a single blue mana. Yeah.
As if you're going to cycle it.
Right. You're almost never cycling this card. You have to be horrendously mana screwed or like be in a situation where you just need a specific card.
I'm not even doing it then. I just go down with the ship. I'll just show it to my opponent.
That's part of why I don't like cycling on bomb rares. But 2 blue for a 4/4 flyer. I'm in. That card is, I think, an A by itself.
I think it's like a B+.
Really? You don't even think it's like an A minus?
Maybe an A-.
2 blue for a
It's definitely not an A. It's
imagine
definitely not an A.
Imagine just casting that.
Oh, I feel great, but I don't think it's an A.
I think that
it's close.
The cycler discard scry and the fact that it is its own cycling does get this into A territory for me.
It does for me too. I give this card an A- as it sits. It's just the vanilla 4 or the French vanilla 4/4 flyer for 4 didn't. But I do give Curator of Mysteries an A-.
Well, I'll give Curator of Mysteries an A. I think that's it's just a great card.
What about Drakehaven? This is the one that looks like an uncommon build around, but after having played against it, I'm kind of glad it's not, because I don't want to see this card all the time.
It is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It's rare. It says whenever you cycle or discard a card, you may pay 1. If you do, create a 2/2 blue Drake with flying.
Card's very powerful.
Yeah, very clearly a build around, but I think an insanely good one. There's so many cycling cards. If you get 2 Drakes out of this, you've got yourself a pretty good deal. And if you get 3 or more, then you're really just doing it. So
yeah,
I would give it build around A.
I would too. I give Drakehaven a build around A. I've played with it or I've played against it multiple times, and it's been fantastic every time. I was like, oh, that's a rare. Okay, good, because like I said, you don't want to play against that thing all the time. Glyph Keeper is the Sphinx for this set. What does it do?
It's 3 blue for a rare Sphinx. It's a 5/3 flyer. Whenever Glyph Keeper becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, counter that spell or ability. And it has Embalm of 5 blue. This card's fantastic.
Epically good.
5 mana, 5/3 flying that they can't kill with spells or abilities very easily at all. They have to use multiples on them. And it just embalms if you do manage to throw 2 removal spells at it in the same turn. So this is another A. I mean, this card is just fantastic.
I do too. It just ends the game so quickly. It asks a very prominent question, and if they can't answer it, they die. And then if they do, they die anyway because you just embalm it. So yeah, Glyph Keeper gets an A. Card's fantastic. All right, what about Kefnet the Mindful? This is the blue god.
This is 2 and a blue for a 5/5 god at a Mythic Rare. Flying indestructible, and Kefnet can't attack or block unless you have 7 or more cards in hand.
Oof.
The activated is 3 and a blue. It says draw a card, and then you may return a land you control to your hand.
Have not played with or against this one yet.
I don't like this one very much.
Yeah.
I think that an enchantment for 2 and a blue that says 3 and a blue draw a card would be a card I would put in some decks, but really realistically, no, is not that good.
It's very slow. Seven mana investment for your first card.
Yes, and you really have to have the board stalled. And having played this format, it's not the fastest format in the world, but you can't just do this. Like, this is still not a format where you can just be like, yeah, I'm paying 4 turn to draw a card. I don't care what you're doing.
Yeah, I've gotten ran over in this format multiple times. Yeah. I would not feel comfortable doing that.
And then getting to 7 cards, like, yes, I understand you can pay 4, then draw a card, then bounce a land. But that's still, I think you still end up in a spot where you're just paying too much to not affect the board. And then if you're bouncing lands, you're having a hard time using your cards. I'm pretty skeptical on Kefnet. I think this is one of the ones that we're most likely to be wrong on, having not played it at all. But it does not look good to me. Kefnet looks like a D to me.
So here's the question I have for Kefnet. So let's say you play Kefnet on 3, then on turn 4, you pay the mana, you draw the card. Does that put you about to 7? I'm sure it does. And then you start attacking with it.
Yeah.
Does the game just end? Like, does your opponent just go, take 5? Because I agree with you. Like, you're falling behind. Yes, you have cards in hand, but if you're picking up your own lands, you're just going to end the game one way or the other with a bunch of cards in your hand. That feels very all in. So my question is, am I cool with going all in on Kefnet?
I could see doing that, but it's still the fact that if you've spent a lot of turns doing this, you're not as likely to be pressuring them. Whereas like with something like Ronus, where you're giving +2/+0 and trample, like that's a combo with attacking with a 5/5. Drawing a card and then returning a land is not really a combo with attacking with a 5/5.
It feels so bad to pick up your lands. I'm going to go C on Kefnet the Mindful, and I'm just going to admit that that's more of a punt than anything. I have to play with or against it. This card's just too hard to figure out. Because you might just win. You might just be like, pick this thing up 5-you.
A great card in sealed too. Like your opponent plays one of these on turn 6, and you're just like, oh man, it's going to be really hard to win this game.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's move on to New Perspectives. This is 5 on a blue for an enchantment at rare. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards. So 6 mana, draw 3 at sorcery speed. And then it says, as long as you have 7 or more cards in hand, you may pay 0 rather than paying cycling costs.
It's essentially 6 mana, draw 3. I don't think you're going to be cycling very often with this. But I think that if you compare it to like Thassa's Bounty, if you remember from Theros, which was 5 and a blue, draw 3, like that was wildly unplayable. And 6 mana to just draw 3, I just don't think is a good enough deal.
No, especially it's a sorcery. I feel like New Perspectives, that second clause just isn't going to come up enough and limited that you really care that much. There's some cool thing I'm sure you can do in Constructed or if you build the deck around it, but for us, it's 6 mana, sorcery speed, draw 3 cards. And I agree with you. I'd say it's like a D. Maybe it's a D-. It's just the type of card that like it'll sneak into the deck sometimes, but that's not a premium card. That's not a card that we go out of our way for. 6 mana, draw 3. That's not that great.
No, it's not.
So I'm going to go D on New Perspectives.
Yeah, I like D on New Perspectives as well. I think that it would be fun if you had a really good cycling deck and just kind of go off. But I don't even see how you have 7 cards in your hand at that point, even with the draw 3. So
agreed. What about Pull from Tomorrow? This one's really interesting.
This is a X blue instant at rare. It says draw X cards, then discard a card. Yeah, I think this card is good. If you cast it for 5 mana, you get draw 3, discard 1, which isn't terrible at instant speed. Mm-hmm. It does trigger the when you discard a card cards. So like your Heckma Sentinels or what have you. And it scales well if you flood out and you have 7 lands in play, all of a sudden this is just going to give you a new lease on life. So I like Pull from Tomorrow. I think it's not insane, but I think that I would always be happy to play it. It looks like a B to me. It
looks like a B to me too. This is just a powerful effect. Being able to reload your hand, you can build an entire game plan around Pull from Tomorrow, where you trade off a lot, and then after you've built up your mana, you fire this thing off, and then you're just way, way ahead of your opponent. So I like B for Pull from Tomorrow as well. Plus, it's just a cool card. Like that's an exciting effect. All right, what about Vizier of Many Faces? I talked about the clone earlier. This is it.
This is a 2 blue for rare Shapeshifter Cleric. You may have Vizier of Many Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except if Vizier of Many Faces was embalmed. It's no mana cost. It's a white zombie as well, and it has embalm of 3 blue. Mm-hmm. So it's a clone with embalm. It costs 4.
That's what it is.
To copy any creature, and you pay 5 to embalm it. That is great. Clones are great. Two
Oh,
blue
yeah.
blue clone would be like, I think, a B plus.
I think so too. Clones are
And
so good and limited for some
yeah.
reason.
Well, it just means you're at the very worst tied for the best creature.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
if the best creature has a enter the battlefield ability, you get to trigger that. Um, and then
And then it's got
the fact that
Embalm.
it has Embalm means once you trade it off, it comes back as the best creature again, which might be a better creature this time. So it's
Relatively
just,
cheap Embalm costs at 3 blue blue also.
yeah, it's just one of those, you know, creatures with Embalm, kind of like Angel of Sanctions, where, or the 5/3 Sphinx, where they play it and it's like, ugh, I have to deal with this thing that's very good,
Totally.
and then they're going to embalm it, and I have to deal with it again. So I can't decide between A minus and A. I think I'm just going to go A, though.
It's an A.
It
Definitely
just seems
an A.
really, really good.
Yeah, it's the best creature on the battlefield twice. It's an A. Vizier of Many Faces is an A. Last blue card is called Commit to Memory. What does that one do? This is our aftermath.
Commit is the front side. It's 3 and a blue instant at rare. Put target spell or non-land permanent into its owner's library second from the top.
Target spell or non-land permanent.
Yeah,
okay.
This card is quite good.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful right there.
It's already 1-for-1, right? Because like they're skipping a draw step when they redraw the card, and they have to wait an additional turn or two depending on when you cast this. And it also nukes spells, so you can just pass with your mana up. If they play a good spell, you can just commit it, and if they don't, you just bounce whatever their best creature is. So there's no way to lose out.
Mm-hmm.
The backside of it is memory. It's 4 blue blue sorcery. Each player shuffles his or her hand into their library and then draws 7 new cards. So this card you're not going to cast very often, because paying 6 mana to give both players 7 cards and then letting them untap and have first crack at playing all them is not great. But it is strictly better to have this ability there as opposed to not having it. So even if you don't use it very often, I would always play Commit. Commit would be a fine card, and the fact that it has memory gives it a nice little bonus.
Yeah, I like that card a lot. I would give it like a B.
Yeah, I like Commit at B.
Like blue removal, basically, and it's flexible too. It's a little expensive at 4 mana, but yeah, B for Commit to Memory. Blue looks cool. It's kind of annoying, right? Like it's got a lot of groan test potential there with the Sphinx you can't kill, the clone that comes back. You're just like, ugh. Somebody fires off the X draw spell, and right when they had thought the dust had settled on the game, and now you've got 5 cards in your hand or whatever. It's all very good. Let's move on to black. Ooh, here's one of the better cards in this set. Archfiend of Ifnir. This is 3 black for a 5/4 flying demon at rare, which you're sold already, right?
Yeah, that card is already good.
Yeah, and then on top of it, it says whenever you cycle or discard another card, which is kind of weird, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. All of them get a -1/-1 counter. That's absurd. And then, LOL, it has cycling too.
Right. So this card is great. The abilities are all great. And the fact that it has cycling means that, yeah, maybe you'll cycle early if you're missing land drops or you have a Gravedigger or something along those lines. I think this card's an A. I don't know if it's an A+, but it's definitely an A.
Yeah, I have it at A. It's probably an A+, whatever. Like, it has the ability to wipe your opponent's board, but if it doesn't, who cares? It's a 5/4 flying for 5. You're just super, super happy with that anyway. I'm going to go A+ on Archfiend of Ifnir. It's just a great card.
All right. Yeah, I'm in for A+. If you play this and untap with it, usually their whole team dies.
Yeah, it's just game over. This is in the short list for best cards in the set, right?
I have this at third.
Third, okay. We'll talk about that in a few minutes here. Bontu the Glorified is the black god. It's 2 and a black for a 4/6 menace indestructible. Of course, legendary creature got it. Mythic rare. Bontu the Glorified can't attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. That's pretty morbid. And it says 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature, scry 1, each opponent loses a life, and you gain a life. So you can make it so that Bontu can attack when you want, assuming that you have a creature somewhere. And on top of it, you drain them. And on top of that, you get to scry 1 as well. But it is costing you creatures to do so. Which is realistically the only way that's going to happen, right? I mean, like, if your opponent's like, go, how is one of your creatures dying before combat? From your opponent doing something. It's just not going to happen, right?
Right. You're the one who's going to be enabling this most of the time.
Yeah. So what do you think?
I think Bontu the Glorified is good, but I think you have to build around Bontu. I think This looks like more of a build around than the other gods. Like you can put all the other gods into a deck and they'll just do their thing. Bantu, you actually have to do some work. You have to get some Doom Dissenters or Festering Mummies or what have you. It looks like a build around B to me.
Okay, yeah, I like build around B. I mean, if you have creatures, the cards, you're going to end the game very quickly. But the times when you don't, or when they've removed some of your creatures, or you don't have as expendable of creatures, Bantu the Glorified looks a lot worse. Your opponent's just never going to give you the opportunity to attack with it. You have to make that happen. Build around B for Bantu. Another...
It does have the defensive part where if you have this out and your opponent has like a kill spell, if they kill one of your creatures and then attacks, that doesn't actually work out great for them.
Sure, it is a great blocker. I mean, I was speaking from the attacking standpoint, but from them attacking you, it's a 4/6 with indestructible. Like, they have to respect the fact that you could kill your worst creature to do the drain and scry and then just block whatever they're attacking with, and that's a very real possibility as well. Again, if you have the creatures, especially expendable ones. Next is another mythic here in black. Boy, is this a powerful card. It's called Cruel Reality. It's 5 black for an enchantment or a curse. At Mythic, it enchants a player, and at the beginning of an enchanted player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker. You just have to do that. If they can't, he or she loses 5 life. This card's incredibly powerful. This is basically inevitability. I do too. It's just inevitability, right? Like, the entire game just pivots around this card once it hits the battlefield because you never have to attack again if you don't want. Now you can. I mean, it might be correct too in some scenarios, but all you have to do is just say, go. They lose a creature right away. They just lose a creature straight away. And then they have to try to come up with some way to get attacks in or to get you dead. If they can't, they pass it back to you and you say, okay, play a creature, go. They lose another creature, and as things move forward, this starts getting lower and lower on the creatures, and you can either start attacking them or just letting this thing do the work, losing 5 life. When they can't, the game's over by that point. So I like Cruel Reality a lot. I think it's really powerful. Now, it is 7 mana, so it ain't cheap, and it is a little slow. If their opponent has a well-built-out board, the first couple of turns are going to be sacrificing things they may not care about anyway. So, you do have to be pretty stable to get this thing down. But if you do, it's really the only card that matters anymore.
The fact that it just starts right away means that you just have to get to 7 and play this and not be like heinously far behind. If you're outnumbered 4-0, then yes, you might lose. But imagine if they just have 2 creatures in play. You play this, they sack their worst creature, hit you for like 5, play another creature, the next turn you just play a chump blocker and then or bounce spell or kill their creature, and then they can't win. It's really hard to win at that point.
Yeah. The Abyss.
I think this card's good.
I do too.
Even at 7 mana, I think the card, you do have to build around a little, but I wouldn't give it a build around grade.
I agree.
I think you could put it in any mid-range deck. Just don't put it in your fast aggro decks and you'll be fine.
Yeah. But I really like it. Like, I think it's, I want to give it like a B+. I really like this card.
Yeah, I like B+ for Cruel Reality.
I think in Sealed, it's probably absurd too. Oh, and one little note. Woody told me today that he had this on the battlefield today, and somebody, mind controlled it or whatever it's called.
Oh, they claimed it. They claim, yes.
Yeah. That doesn't do anything. The enchanted player is still the enchanted player, no matter who controls the enchantment. So don't make that mistake. Yeah. So B+ for Cruel Reality. Dispossess. This one's we can be quick with this one.
Oh yeah, it's 2 and a black sorcery at rare. Choose an artifact card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. Yeah, this is an F.
F City.
Like, you should just not put this card in your deck under any circumstances.
Yeah, Dispossess just gets an F. Sorry, Dispossess. Dread Wanderer. This one's kind of interesting. It's black mana for a 2/1 zombie jackal. It's rare. It enters the battlefield tapped. But of note here, it can block. A lot of these types of creatures can't. This one can, just not right away. You can pay 2 and a black to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield, but you can only activate the ability anytime you could cast a sorcery, which makes sense, and only if you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. So, it comes back again, tapped, and on your turn, it's very slow, but it can block. It is at least some little form of attrition. I played against it. It wasn't great. I found it to be a reasonable card, but not a great card. I think it's playable, but I would probably give it something like a C.
I think it might be slightly better than that just because even though it can't block that first turn you play it, it's still just a 1 mana 2/1. without really a significant drawback. And if your opponent can't block it, like if they ever trade with it, it's going to come back. Granted, by the time it comes back, it's just not.
It doesn't matter anymore. That's the problem. When it comes back, it's like, yeah, sure, have all you want.
Yeah,
I think with sacrifice outlets and stuff, this card's good. We were talking about Bantu earlier. If you can make that go, then that's fine. But I think just on its own, it's like a C or a C minus.
Yeah, I like C for Dread Wonder. I think any black deck is just going to play this, and it'll be fine.
All right, Planeswalker time. Liliana, Death's Majesty is 3 black for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. She's Liliana. You can +1 to make a 2/2 zombie creature token. It's a black zombie creature token, and you mill yourself for 2. You can -3, so play her -3. She's on 2 loyalty to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. That's pretty nice. And then her ultimate comes at -7, which is actually quite quick. 5 mana plus, she's at 6. You say go. Your opponent ships the turn back to you plus, and you ship the turn back. You're threatening ultimate already. Her ultimate, destroy all non-zombie creatures. Oof. It's powerful.
Yeah. I've had the misfortune to play against Liliana already.
How did that go?
Not well for me. She just protects herself so well, and like you said, races to the ultimate, where also has so much loyalty, where I ended up in a situation where I could attack Liliana from like 7 to 2, but then I would just die to a bunch of zombies.
You just lose your board, yeah.
And if I didn't attack, or no, if I attacked her, I could take her down to 2 loyalty, but the zombies would just kill me.
Oh, I see.
And if I didn't attack, I would just lose my board to the ultimate. So, and that she can just chump with zombies anyway. So, plus she can also just get back the biggest creature in your opponent's graveyard, when they have her. So, I add all those together, and I think Liliana's just an A.
Flat A, agreed.
She's unbeatable when you're ahead, and still like a very playable card in your behind. Coming in with 6 loyalty and a blocker makes her very hard to kill.
Agreed. Love it. I think Liliana Death's Majesty is an A as well. Great card. Really, really good. Liliana's Mastery is next. This is another really good card. Same mana cost, 3 black. This one's an enchantment at rare. Zombies you control get +1/+1. That's just a static effect that this card gives. But when Liliana's Mastery enters a battlefield, you get 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So you're getting 2 3/3s for 5 mana here, plus the ability to affect any other zombies you have, which, as you may remember, all of your embalmed creatures are zombies, and then there's a bunch of other cards that are just naturally zombies in the set too. Liliana's Mastery is very, very good. Just 2 3/3s for 5 mana. I'm already into that.
Yeah, and you're gonna buff some of your other zombies, even though you don't really have to do any work. Just put this card in your deck if you see it.
Yeah.
So
I like B+ for Liliana's Mastery.
Yeah, I was gonna say B+ seems about right.
Yeah. All right, let's look at Plague Belcher. It's gross. 2 and a black for a 5/4 zombie beast with menace. It's rare. So 3 mana, 5/4 menace. What is the downside? When Plague Belcher enters the battlefield, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Okay, so it's one of these cards, but it's a rare version. So what do we have here? A 3/2 menace for 3. I'm already like that. And then if you put the counter somewhere else, you actually get the full 5/4 Plague Belcher. So that's pretty insane. And then it says, whenever another zombie you control dies, each opponent loses a life. Wow. Yeah, that's a beating. Yeah, Plague Belcher's, that's a nice little package. That's really good.
It's a solid card. I opened 2 at the pre-release. I was not impressed. But
you weren't?
Well, it wasn't a draft, right? It was sealed, and my black cards did not mesh well with Plague Belcher. You want
I see.
Doom Dissenters and other 2-drops to lay counters on. You want to be an aggressive deck full of zombies. I just didn't have that.
Okay. I mean, but think of the floor here, right? A 3 mana, 3/2 menace is already okay. I mean, we play that card.
It's already a like C+ there.
Yeah, C+.
C2 menace with the other zombie text, which is fine. But
so does this get us? This has to get us to B- though, right?
It does, yeah, because you can dump the counters elsewhere and end up with like an overcosted or overstated creature for 3 mana.
Totally. Yeah, I like it. I like B- on Plague Belcher. That's just very powerful. 5/4 menace on turn 3 is just absurd. I mean, even if you have to kill your 1 or 2 drop, you're just like, here, deal with this or die very, very quickly. And there's not a lot of ways to do so. So B- for Plague Belcher. What about Shadow of the Grave?
This is 1 and a black. It's an instant at rare. It says, return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn. This looks like a very powerful card for Constructed. This is not a card I'm going to put in my deck in Limited. It just is too much work to build a Divination.
Yeah, build around F.
Yep, looks like a builder on F to me. You're never going to run into a situation where you can reliably get 3 cards, and even when you get 2 cards, you're still talking 4 or 5 mana, and if they don't come in the right order, this card's just a straight up blank. So
Right.
I think that Shadow of the Grave is a builder on F.
Okay. Poor Shadow of the Grave. Last card in black is Never to Return. This is a nice one. Never is the top half. It's 1 black for a sorcery. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Full stop. Love it.
Yep, that's already great.
3 mana sorcery speed, destroy creature is really good. Of course, if it hits a planeswalker, you really did it. The Aftermath side is called Return. It's 3 and a black. It says exile target card from a graveyard. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So look, that isn't a game, a game-ending second ability. But hey, we'll take it. Like, you can hit an Aftermath card, you can hit an Embalm card, you get a zombie for your troubles. It's not like you're sitting there paying 4 mana and not affecting the board in any way. And look, if you do nab an Embalm card or an Aftermath card or something like that, that's something. It's not, it's about the return that you would expect on this. So I really like Never to Return. Never being the critical piece of the puzzle, but Return being like, shrug, sure, I'll take it. I would give this, I guess you just give it an A. Like, it's just 3 mana, remove anything with upside. Like, that's hard to give much more. Maybe it's an A-. I don't know, but whatever. This card's just great. I mean, you're first picking it, never not playing it.
The card is unconditional removal plus the opportunity for a 2-for-1, and there's nothing really wrong with it. It's not so out of the ordinary for a card that, you'd give it a bomb rating, but it is an A-, so that already is very, very good.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so that's black. Some good stuff. Liliana, kind of the headliner there, I think. Maybe Archfiend.
Archfiend, I think, is actually slightly better, but still incredibly good.
Yeah. Okay, so that moves us to red. Let's get into red here. What is our first rare? It looks like it is Combat Celebrant.
It says 2 in a red. It's a 4/1 Mythic Rare, a human warrior. If Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do, untap all other creatures you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase.
Whoa. So 3 mana 4/1. I'm not super excited about that, but I just get 2 combats the first time I decide to exert my Combat Celebrant? Let the celebrations begin.
You do, but it doesn't get another attack.
It doesn't, because it stays tapped. Okay.
Right. I mean, I think this card is playable, but I do not think it's anything close to a bomb, because you have to be in a position where you attack with this 4/1. You have other creatures that can untap and attack again because their attack is good enough that they survive that attack.
Ooh.
It just doesn't seem like a reasonable thing.
Wow. That's not reasonable at all. And also, this is very likely to die the first time it attacks, so that you won't get to do this multiple times in a game.
Oh, you're almost never doing this multiple times. You basically have to be playing against a punching bag to make this card really go off.
Yeah, this thing's really good against a stuffed animal, but against an actual Magic player, I think it loses a lot of its punch.
So, I mean, a 3 mana 4/1 is a playable card, and the ability is not 0. So I would say this card's a C, but I wouldn't say it's that exciting.
I'll go C+ just because. Right. I have no reason other than it's a Mythic Rare, and it probably will win some games that a C wouldn't. Glorious End. What a weird card. This is 2 and a red for an instant at Mythic. It says end the turn. At the beginning of your next end step, you lose the game. So I'm going to read the reminder text for end the turn. It says exile all spells and abilities on the stack, including this card. The player whose turn it is discards down to his or her maximum hand size. Damage wears off. That's for creatures, of course. And this turn and until end of turn effects end. At the beginning of your next end step. This isn't instant. You can play it on your opponent's turn, and then you get one more turn to win the game. And if you don't, you lose the game. We're not playing this, right? Like, there's no way this ever makes the deck in a reasonable limited deck.
No. I had a pretty long discussion with the guys at work about this card when we were at lunch one day, just because I was very curious before I was doing the written set reviews. And our conclusion was this card's just terrible.
It's just awful. It's just a straight up F.
Yeah, it is an F. Basically, because they get to untap, it's not just take another turn, you lose the game at the end of that turn. You have to maneuver these situations. And how many times will you win the game with that extra turn that you weren't already going to win? How many times are you still going to lose because it doesn't help you? Basically, it has to turn a loss into a win. It doesn't help in games where you're already winning, and it doesn't often help in games you're already losing. So it has to be one of those midpoint games where that extra half turn is exactly what you need.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, you can just fire this off on their upkeep, right?
Yeah, they skip their draw step, but all their blockers are untapped. You can
Yeah.
fire it off in response to a spell on their turn to counter that spell, essentially.
But you
they make
have to win. It's so
right,
bad.
and they make an all-out attack, and you cast this, and you don't die to that attack, but it's still just like too many moving pieces.
Yeah, I love the first half of all of these discussions. It's just and then you must win the game the next turn or else you lose that I can't do. So F for Glorious End. Take a deep breath, Louise. I know you're a little shell-shocked from this next guy, but here's Glory Bringer. Why don't you read us that one?
It says 3 red for a 4/4 dragon. It's a mythic rare. Wait, no, of course not.
I thought it was for quite a while. It turns out it's
it really
not.
should be. It's a regular rare, not a mythic rare. It's flying haste. You may exert Glorybringer as it attacks. When you do, it deals 4 damage to target non-dragon creature an opponent controls. This card is the best card in the set. And I actually don't think it's particularly close. 5 mana 4/4 flying haste would already be an A. That card's already just savage beating.
Yes.
And you can exert it to kill one of their creatures.
A fairly big one, too.
Yes,
4
4 damage is enough to kill almost everything. Like, how is this card just remotely reasonable?
No, it's not. It's really
and
not.
because it's a rare, I've actually somehow played with it twice and against it twice so far. And yes, the card is just absurd. So
A+?
Glorybringer's an A+.
Yeah, this card is unbelievable. A+ for Glorybringer. Don't ever pass that card, please. Harsh Mentor is next. 1 and a red for a 2/2 human cleric at rare. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it isn't a mana ability, Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. 2/2 for 2, so fine. And then it's got this upside of making your opponent's activated abilities cost them 2 life. An activated ability, by the way, is any ability that has a cost and then a colon and then you get something for it. Not triggered abilities. So don't get those two mixed up. The triggered abilities will not work with Harsh Mentor, but non-mana activated abilities will. Think Fanbearer, cards like that have some type of payment and then you get something for it on the card. Harsh Mentor is just going to ding them, and you're already fine with the 2/2 for 2. So I like Harsh Mentor. I don't think it's some game warping card, but it could be very annoying against the right opponent or against the right type of card like the Fanbearer, stuff like that, and you're not really giving up much to do this. I just don't think it pushes it up into that first pickable range or whatever. Like it's a card you'd happily put in your deck, but you're probably taking like Magma Spray over this or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate assessment. It's just a 2/2 for 2 with like minor upside.
It's like a C+, right?
Yeah, C+ works for this.
Yeah. All right, what about Hazaret the Fervent?
So 3 and a red for a 5/4 mythic rare. It's a legendary god. Indestructible haste. Hazaret the Fervent can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand. And you can pay 2 and a red and discard a card. Hazaret deals 2 damage to each opponent. So not creatures, just opponents. But the trigger condition on this is much easier than most of the other gods, just because a lot of the red decks just want to get down to 1 or 0 cards anyway. And Hazaret discarding cards, of course, gets you there pretty fast if that's what you want.
Yeah, she also gets the job done pretty quickly as far as just getting you dead, as it turns out.
Yeah, I think that Hazaret is very, very good. Exactly what aggressive red decks wants, and be pretty difficult to deal with. The haste part is a little funny because it's just not going to happen that often.
If you turn 4 Hazaret, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, even on like a turn 6 Hazaret, it's still not like super likely to be hasty, but still, it is upside. And I would say Hazaret the Fervent gets an A-.
I give it an A- as well. Card's really, really powerful. And the thing to remember here is if they get, if they have a normal red start and get you down, imagine this is just an enchantment. Just sits there and says, every card I draw is 2 damage to you. So I'll see you in 3 turns. You're at 6 life, right? Like do something about my indestructible, creature here, or you're going to just straight lose the game to literally any card off the top of my library. They just sit there and just throw every card at you. And that's assuming that you can even deal with the damage that Hazaret can do too. So yeah, A- for Hazaret the Fervent. Really good card. Hazaret's Favor. I don't need any favors from Hazaret. 2 and a red for an enchantment at rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target creature you control get +2/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. If you do, yowza, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Hazaret drives a pretty hard bargain with her favors, it turns out. My goodness. Hazaret's gift is bestowed only once, it says. Well, I suppose so.
Oh, it's going to be bestowed 0 times if it's up to me. This card seems very bad.
This is so all in, right?
Yeah, basically throwing away a creature in order to get an extra attack is just not a good deal.
No.
You get +2/+0 in haste, so you get an extra or attack a turn earlier and at +2/+0, but it's still just not not what you want out of a. First of all, you're spending a card. Second of all, you're going to be down creatures when you use this. So this looks like an F to me. I just don't see the situation where this is great.
Me too. I think it's just a straight up F. I think you'd be better off with a 3/2 for 3 in your deck. All right. What about Heartpiercer Manticore? What does this one do?
It says 2 red for a 4/3 rare Manticore.
Okay.
When Heartpiercer Manticore enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Heartpiercer Manticore deals damage equal to that creature's power to target creature or player, and has Embalm 5 and a red.
Okay, and that is another creature you said, right? It can't sack itself.
It can't throw itself, but 4 mana for a 4/3 with Embalm 5 and red already be like a pretty solid card.
Yeah,
4 mana
that's
for a 4/3 is decent. Embalm 5 and red is decent.
Yeah.
Getting to throw one of your creatures at one of their creatures or at your opponent, if it comes down to it, is just a very powerful ability. So you can build around Heartpiercer Manticore and have good sacrifice fodder. You can also just put it in any deck and it'll be good. This looks like an A- to me.
It does to me too. I think that ability is the type of ability that you think, well, I don't want to sacrifice my creatures, but you're going to look and you're going to be like, my opponent's at 7. I'll throw this random 4-powered creature at them. Next turn, I'm just going to attack with my Heartpiercer Manticore. Sure, they're going to block, and I'm going to go land, go, and they're going to look at my graveyard and be like, well, I have nothing I can do. You're going to flash that thing back or whatever it's called, embalm it, and then boom, you're just going to kill me with it anyway. I think those situations are going to come up more often than you think. A- for Heartpiercer Manticore. Let's see here. Where are we at next? Soulscar Mage?
Yes.
Yeah, looks like it. What does that
this
do?
This is red for a 1/2. It's a human wizard at rare. So 1 mana 1/2 with prowess, and it says if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counters on that creature.
Non-combat. So that means basically it turns your burn spells into like wither type.
Yeah,
like
they just keep the counters instead of dealing damage. Well, this card looks pretty bad to me.
Really
the second ability part of text is basically irrelevant. It's just not going to happen in irrelevant fashion. And 1 mana 1/2 prowess. This is just not a set where that's particularly interesting. So
no, I wouldn't.
This looks like a D to me. Like
I have it lower. I just don't imagine putting this in my deck.
I could see a spell heavy deck playing this card, but it's still pretty bad.
I'll go D-. I just think you're going to see this almost never, or you should never see it.
Right.
For Soulscar Mage. Sweltering Suns is next. It's 1 red for a sorcery. At rare, it says it deals 3 damage to each creature, but it's also got cycling of 3. That is very powerful.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Basically, this is like the epitome of really powerful ability that also won't always be good and cycling. So the combination of a board wipe that also you get to play 4 toughness creatures into, that also just cycles if the situation isn't right. Looks great to me.
Me too, man. Such high upside, and then the floor's not that low. Even though it is cycling 3, it's not cheap still. Being able to bail on this and just get a card when it's not good is really just shorts everything up. This card just seems really good to me. I think it's like a B+.
Yeah, I like B+ for Sweltering Suns.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Well, actually, I like A-. I think it's even better than that. It's just the fact that it's just sometimes going to kill 3 of their creatures on turn 4. And you can just cycle it when it's not good. Seems great. So I have A- for Sweltering.
All right, we love the card. Last one, the very aptly named Insult to Injury. I had a chance to play with this card, and oh boy, is it a beating. It's 2 and a red for a sorcery. It says, damage can't be prevented this turn. So when you see that, you're like, okay. If a source you control would deal damage this turn, it deals double that damage instead. Now, a source means a spell or a creature. Either one. So if your creature attacks, it just deals double damage. If you have a burn spell, it's going to deal double. Speaking of having a burn spell, injury. 2 and a red is a sorcery. This is the aftermath side. It says injury deals, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, 2 damage to target creature and 2 damage to target player. The idea being here that you get up to 6 mana, you play insult, and then you play injury, and it does 4 damage because it actually counts the insult as a doubler. So it does 4 damage to a creature, 4 damage to a player, plus all of your creatures deal double damage. It is just a straight up winner if you get a chance to do that. Like I said, I had it in my deck and I was blown away. The card is fantastic.
Oh yeah, this card's absurd. Basically what happens is your opponent pays 6 mana, they kill one of your creatures that's a 4/4 or smaller, you take 4, then they attack with a bunch of 2/2s into your 3/3s and 4/4s, and they deal double damage.
Yeah. Or they took away your good blocker, and now they kill you.
You just
you just die.
So this card is an A.
I think so too. I think it's a straight up A.
It's just going to end so many games the turn you play it. You can also just play it on 3 mana if you have like a good attack, and then flash it back later. Like there's just a lot of things you can do with it, but the base 6 mana version is just very, very powerful.
was funny. I cast it and flashed it back, and then I thought, oh no, what if my opponent has the fog? And then I'm like, oh wait, damage can't be prevented this turn. Taste it. Yeah, insult to injury. Aptly named and gets an A. Okay, so that moves us to our multicolored cards.
Oh, red was by far the winner, by the way.
You think so? Glorybringer?
The fact that it had a Glorybringer, Hazaret, insult to injury, like it just, I think, had Sweltering Suns, just like all the best cards.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that did have a lot of really good stuff. Oof, yeah. I'm a little scared of red. Red is powerful. Okay, let's move on to our multicolored cards. This is going to include the normal gold cards plus the two different colors of Aftermath cards as well. First one up, though, is called Bounty of the Luxa. This is 2 green, blue for an enchantment. It's rare. It's a weird card, by the way, so hang in there with me. It's at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, so that's your first main phase. Remove all flood counters from Bounty of the Luxa. Now, it doesn't come with any on it. So it says, if no counters were removed this way, put a flood counter on Bounty of the Luxa and draw a card. So if it doesn't have any on it, you put one on and you draw a card. Otherwise, meaning that so in any other scenario, you add colorless, green, blue to your mana pool. You just get 3 mana. So it's like every other turn, it goes back and forth. You draw a card, then you get 3 mana for free. Then you draw a card, then you get 3 mana for free. For a 4 mana enchantment, you do have to wait till your next turn before you get that card back. But you do get it back that next turn. And then, from there on out, it's all free mana and cards. It's just a big party on the river. What do you think about Bounty of the Luxa? I have had a chance to see this one and play multiple times.
I've lost to this card already. It is a little slow, but you know what you want when you have a bunch of extra cards? A bunch of mana to cast those cards. Indeed. It is a very synergistic card with itself, and in any deck that can just keep itself alive, it's going to be very good. Also, you can just put this in any blue-green deck. I think it's going to be powerful.
I do too. It is slow. Like, don't get it mistaken, but it wins you the game. I mean, it's drawing you extra cards, letting you cast them. It's good enough, right? Like, I don't consider it just like an all-star bomb. If somebody's playing, some red-green combat trick deck, you're going to be pretty bummed if your turn 4 play is Bounty of the Luxa. That said, if you can stabilize, it will win you the game.
You get the mana back pretty quickly. You draw an extra card in the next turn, and then the turn after that, you get 3 mana, and then you should no longer be behind after spending the 4 mana on this, basically.
Yeah, but I don't know if I'd consider that pretty quickly. I mean, that's 2 full turns later. Like, not even the turn you played it, but like the next turn goes by, nothing. Then the next turn after.
You get an extra card.
Yeah, but I'm just saying for the mana. Yeah.
I think that the combination of those things, it's a lot. I think it actually is better than just draw an extra card every turn. Like in limited, I think I would rather have Bounty of the Luxa than just an enchantment that says draw an extra card every turn. So.
All right. Well, what do you think? It's hard to give it a super high grade, but I recognize the power level. Like it is real. I think it's like a B-, and I want to give it just like the ever slightest hint of build around. Like, you need to keep this card in mind when you build your deck. Like, you don't want it in an aggressive deck. I don't think many of the blue-green decks are going to call themselves aggressive, but still, it's not the type of card that you want to curve aggressive creatures into or whatever. It's a much better card if you can kind of hold down the fort and then just sort of let it do its thing while you pile out the cards and draw extra ones.
I would give it just a straight B.
Just a B. Okay.
Yeah.
Bounty of the Luxa gets a B. Next is Hapatra, Vizier of Poison. This is a good one. It's black-green for a 2/2. Legendary creature, human cleric at rare. Whenever Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons deals combat damage to a player, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Now, here's the kicker, though. When you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, so that's yours or theirs, create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. Yikes. That's a good one. Hapatra's really strong. I had this in my last draft deck, and I played Hapatra on turn 2 multiple times during the draft. Never got to connect once, but it didn't particularly matter because all of my cards that said, that they come in with -1/-1 counters on my creatures, I'm just spitting out these Death Touch tokens. And those things are so annoying for the opponent to have to deal with, especially if they're playing like green-red, where they don't have any flyers or anything like that. And it makes Hapatra a must-kill. And quite quickly, too. And in the case that you get to play Hapatra on turn 2 on the play, she's just insane because they have to have a 2-drop that can block it. And if they don't, you're just attacking with it and shrinking down their creatures and getting death touch snakes, and it just snowballs from there.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like an actual build around, but there's some element there. I think you could, any black-green deck, you're just going to put her in your deck because by herself, she's already pretty dangerous because if she hits your opponent, you get a snake and a -1/-1 counter. And so many cards work with her, but she really seems filthy, like when you described when you have a bunch of cards that work with her.
Yeah, no, you're right. To really maximize on Hapatra, you do want to have at least some of the cards that put -1/-1 counters somewhere, whether it's on your creatures or not. I mean, the removal spell works too. But she's really good. I think she's a B. If you're in the deck that has those, she bumps up even higher to like a B+ or an A- because the synergies just get completely insane. So I'm going to settle on B+ for Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons.
I like B for Hapatra.
Okay. Neheb the Worthy. God, this card's scary. 1 black-red for a 2/2 legendary creature Minotaur Warrior at Rare. Neheb has a lot going on. First strike, so 2/2 first strike for 3. Other Minotaurs you control have first strike. As long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, Minotaurs you control get +2/+0. That includes Neheb, by the way. And whenever Neheb the Worthy deals combat damage to a player, each player discards a card. Oof, that's a lot going on with Neheb.
Well, first of all, 3 mana for a 2/2 first strike is pretty good. Not great, but good.
Yep.
Like you would frequently be like, okay, this is okay. Neheb does give the bonus to itself when you have 1 or fewer cards. So
yes, I already said that.
Well, I'm saying like unlike a lot of other lords,
yeah,
like, you have to evaluate it as itself,
like
which is
because the 4/2 first strike's like a pretty big game,
right? So it means that you don't need another Minotaur for this card to be good. Like I would always play this card with no Minotaurs in my deck,
as long as you were black-red.
Yes, I mean I wouldn't splash.
I think not. Yeah,
but it's funny because when you look at like a lord, you're usually evaluating the context of like how many Minotaurs do you need to play this. This isn't a build around card. You just put this in your black-red deck and it's very good.
Yeah.
The discard a card part is interesting too because the black-red decks do push you to want to get to 1 card or fewer in hand, but not all of them will. Sometimes you'll just have a deck and you don't care about discarding, but because this already asks you to have 1 or fewer cards, it kind of like naturally fuels. So this is just one of the weirder lords in that it just like self-solves both things. It both gives itself the bonus and it also wants to discard intrinsically. So again, this card is fine by itself. When you have other Minotaurs, it just gets filthy.
It does. It gets really gross. I had it in a deck.
Like the 2/3 reach sure shot Minotaur. And just get in there.
I had the one that cares about how many instants or sorceries in your yard, and it like Flame Tongue Kavus, and that's just a 2/3 for 4.
Yeah, the Javanalier.
Yeah, but with Neheb, it was like a 4-powered first striking, 4. I was like, wow, it didn't need much to make Neheb really good. And he kind of breaks that synergy, right? Or not synergy, symmetry, right? Where you're discarding cards when he hits, your opponent's probably pretty bummed and you're probably like, okay, not that bad. So I like Neheb quite a bit. I think, does he get to B+ for you?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too.
Basically, if you play Neheb on turn 3, your opponent's not going to have a great block, and you're going to start getting in there and, get Neheb down, get you down to 1 card in hand.
Yeah, and remember also the discard triggers a lot of things too. Like the
Faith, Faith of the Devoted, or any of the discard cards do trigger up. It is first strike too, so it can trigger your Horror of the Broken Lands before damage.
There you go.
That's the other thing is if you draw Neheb late, 3 mana 4/2 first strike. Yeah, so really there aren't very many like on turns 5 or 6 are probably the worst turns for Neheb because it's too small to get through their 4/4s, but it hasn't quite gotten to 1 card in hand. But it gets there pretty quickly. So
yeah, I like Neheb at B+ too.
I like B+ for Neheb the Worthy.
All right, what about Nissa, Steward of Elements? This is the new blue-green Nissa. What does she have going on here?
She's X blue-green for a Planeswalker Nissa at Mythic with loyalty of X. So you could play her for 2 mana, wouldn't advise that. But you can play her for as little as 3 mana and start with 1 loyalty.
Okay.
+2, Scry 2. 0, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card or a creature card with converted mana cost less than equal to the number of loyalty counters on Nissa, you may put that card onto the battlefield.
Okay, and since... Okay, go ahead.
And -6, untap up to 2 target lands you control. They become 5/5 elemental creatures with flying and haste until end of turn. So There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, there is.
First of all, +2 Scry 2. She doesn't protect herself, but +2ing means she kind of outraces damage a decent amount. Like if you play her for 5 mana and then tick her up, she immediately starts at 5 loyalty, right?
Right.
You paid blue green 3 and then +2.
And how much do you value Scry to?
Scry 2 in the middle to late part of the game is worth like slightly more than a card, I think.
It's really powerful in that late stage, yeah.
Once you don't need lands, once you have like 6 lands in play and you don't care about it, a 7th land, then Scry 2 is better than draw 1. And close to draw 2, not quite there, obviously. The 0 ability is pretty good because every time you hit lands, you just get ramped by 1. And if you have like 4 or 5 loyalty on Nissa, then any creature you hit is just going to go into play. You're going to have a pretty creature-heavy deck, otherwise you might start missing. If you have half creatures in your deck and half spells, you're going to end up with something like 28 hits out of 40 if you have 16 or 17 land, and that ends up being just okay. But if you have like 18 creatures in your deck, all of a sudden you're almost always hitting.
Okay. So what would you say the sweet spot is? 4?
Yeah, once you're at 4, I think you won't miss on very many of your creatures at 4.
Yeah, obviously, and then you always have the lands. Yeah, okay.
You have a bunch of big cycling creatures. Obviously, that's not entirely true.
Sure.
And then the -6 also is just like a big fireball at your opponent.
Yeah, it's just a lot of damage. That matters. I mean, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah, because it's not permanent, so it is just aggressive.
Yes.
So you play Nissa for 8 mana, you immediately can fireball your opponent for 10. That's a good deal.
In blue-green, yeah.
Yeah, I think you add all this together and you get a B+.
I do too. That's what I was going to say for Nissa. This is not one of those game-ending, can't-ever-win planeswalkers, but she's got enough going on.
Yeah.
That it makes it worth
card.
it. Yeah, Samut, Voice of Dissent. I had this in my original pre-release pool, and one of our listeners sent us a picture. They had 3 of these. This is just a laundry list of creature abilities. So Samut it costs 3 red-green for a 3/4 legendary creature human warrior. Samut has Flash, Double Strike, Vigilance, and Haste. Also gives other creatures you control haste, and then randomly has an activated ability that is white, tap it to untap another target creature. Now, when I played it, I didn't even have white mana in my deck, and I didn't care at all because Samut was insane.
That's an optional part of the ability.
Yeah. I mean, I had a turn where I pass a turn on 5. My opponent's like, attack you with this thing. I'm like, flash in Samut, block it, kill it. They're like, okay, go. I untap, I play Angler Drake, bounce their creature, and attack with the Drake and Samut and hit them for whatever, 11 or 10. I'm just like, this card's just stupid. It is so powerful to have Double Strike, Vigilance, Haste, and Flash all in the same creature. It just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, Flash Haste is a weird combination.
It's very weird.
It's a little dubious, or a lot. But
it's so weird.
You add all these cards together, a 5 mana, essentially 6/4 Flash, Vigilance, Haste that gives you other creatures haste. It's a great card. It's very powerful. I guess I would give it an A-.
Yeah, I gave Samut an A. I just think the card's great.
You straight up A?
I do, because the reason why I bump it up a little bit is because you can flash it in and block, which gives you a way to generate card advantage. Also, it's a great blocker. It has Vigilance and Double Strike with 4 toughness. And then the fact that you can untap, play your 6th land, play a 6-drop with haste means that if you were like at parity or a little bit ahead, the game's just done. It's just over. So I like that a lot. The flash being kind of the reason why I just give Samut an A. What a great card. What about Temet, Vizier of Noctamoon?
Blue-white for a 2/2 legendary human cleric at rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature token you control gets ++1 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. And embalm 3 white-blue. So by himself, Temet is a 2-mana 2/2 that's going to make your other tokens give 1 per turn, ++1 unblockable.
Mm-hmm.
But once you embalm Temet, he actually starts targeting himself because he's a token now.
Oh, sure.
With the same text and becomes a 3/3 unblockable. This card seems like a bomb.
Mana?
Yeah, a bomb in blue-white. Just gives you like a very quick recurring source of damage. Like you can just play Temet and immediately give, whatever crappy 2/2 you have, +1 unblockable as long as you've embalmed something earlier, and then self combos by embalming as essentially a 3/3 attacker.
Yeah,
so
I think I like this one a lot.
I would say it's not like a bomb, but I would say it's like a B+.
I think it's a B+ for Temet also. That's what I was going to say. Okay, that moves us down to our what are they called? Aftermath cards. We've got a few of these. So the first one's called Prepare to Fight. And this card's actually quite powerful. It's 1 and a white for an instant for the front side at rare. In fact, all of these are rare. There's no mythics of these. Untap target creature. It gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink until end of turn. That's 2 mana, instant speed, untap a creature, give it +2/+2 and lifelink. That's a really powerful combat trick. I mean, that's a game-swinging combat trick right there.
Yeah, I would already play Prepare a lot of the time. We've seen this card, Moment of Heroism.
Yeah.
And it's just a good card.
It's just a good card,
well,
right?
This also even has the untap clause. That actually didn't even have that.
Yeah, so you can use this to really change the race.
Untap your 3/3, block your 4/4. I gain 5 life instead of losing 4 life.
Yeah, that's a big swing. Now, Fight, as you might imagine, is the Aftermath. It's 3 and a green sorcery, and it says target creature you control fights target creature an opponent control. So Fight is exactly what you think it would be. They fight. You said it. So we would play Prepare in say a white-blue deck, right?
I would always play it, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you happen to be white-green, you're getting a removal spell tacked on to what's already a really nice combat trick as well. So there's not a lot to hate about Prepare to Fight. The key thing here, though, is that you're in white, because you need to be able to play Prepare. Fight, to me, is optional. Obviously, you're maximizing on it. I'm assuming if you're in green-white, this card's just absolutely excellent. You also have the opportunity to play them both in the same turn if you get up to 6 mana, where you make one of your creatures huge and gain a bunch of life. You will gain the life off of the fight as well. I like this card a lot. I mean, look, I'm not blown away, right? It's a really good combat trick and kind of a clunky fight card, but when you stitch them together, it's got to be a good grade. Is it like a B+? Probably, right?
I think...
God, you're getting 2 decent cards in one.
In green and white, I think this is an A-.
Okay, cool.
If you're just white and have no chance of flashing back Fight, the card's like a C+ probably.
Yeah, it's like a C+.
So,
all right. So
A-. I think it's an
A-
in green-white.
What does Failure to Comply do?
It's Failure is 1 and a blue, instant, rare. Return target spell to its owner's hand. Comply is white sorcery. Choose a card name until your next turn opponents can't cast spells with this name. I actually don't like this card very much.
No, I don't either.
It's just temporary advantage at best. It's a gold card for minor upside, and I just don't think either have. Certainly as a combo, they do a little bit more, but I would not put Failure in my deck. 1 in a blue, return target spell to its owner's hand is not good enough.
No.
A Remand without a card, and then Comply doesn't add enough to make that worth it. They'll just cast something else instead.
It's more like Failure to Launch.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'd give it... I don't think I'm going to play this card at any point. I'd probably just give it an F.
I think it's an F, yes.
Yeah. What about Rags to Riches?
This is 2 black. It's a sorcery at rare. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Okay, that's a playable card. Not fantastic, but playable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Riches is 5 blue. It's a sorcery.
Okay.
Each opponent chooses a creature he or she controls. You gain control of those creatures. So your opponent gives you their weakest creature.
And the idea being that, on turn 4, you swept away their crappy creatures, but then 3 turns later, they haven't replayed anything bad, and you still get something, reasonable. Ugh. That's a stretch, man. I'm not in love with Rags to Riches. Riches is not a very good card, right?
No, you wouldn't play Riches. This is a weird card. I thought it was going to be better than it was, but I actually... in seeing how games have played out, don't think it's particularly good.
Yeah, I haven't
it
seen
takes a very special set of circumstances for this to work out. So,
it's weird because I'm just thinking about it in terms of Rags, right? Now, Riches, if I'm free rolling it, sure. I mean, stealing one of your opponent's creatures is fine. They can give you a tapped one, which is kind of annoying. They give you the worst one no matter what. But I would put Rags in as like a sideboard card. I'm not even that excited to main deck Rags necessarily. in the right deck, I might be, but 4 mana sorcery speed, all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn is whatever. It's a shrug card. It's fine. It sometimes makes a cut. Sometimes you build around it a little bit. Sometimes you're bringing it out of the board. But I'm not in love with it. I think this card just doesn't look that good to me overall.
I don't like this card. I think if you're blue-black, it's playable, but it's not great. My guess is it's like a C. It's a weird C though, where you'd side it out aggressively or side it in if you don't end up starting it.
I was gonna give it a sideboard C+. Honestly, I'm just looking at Rags and I'm just like, would I start this in my deck? Sometimes, depends on what the composition of my deck is. Under no circumstance am I excited about it. Like if your opponent's playing green and you have rags in your deck, you're just like, well, this doesn't do anything. I'm low on it. I don't think this card's good. I like it less than you
put this in your deck?
I don't think so. I think I just sideboarded in when my opponent's playing red-white.
Like, it's probably just like a sideboard B then, because it's probably going to be decent out of your sideboard.
Yeah. Okay. Sideboard C+. That's the best I can do. I'm sorry, Rags to Riches. Next is Cut to Ribbons. Cut is 1 and a red for a sorcery at rare. It deals 4 damage to target creature. You can't see me. My thumbs are up.
Yeah, cut is already like an A-.
Yeah,
very super efficient removal.
Totally. Now Ribbons is sweet. It's black X for a sorcery, and it says each opponent loses X life. Great.
Yeah, this card is absurd.
Yeah, I've played it. It's fantastic.
It's a removal spell and a win condition.
Yeah, really, really good card. I think it's an A-. It might just be an A. I just think this card is fantastic.
It's just a flat A.
Okay, A for Cut to Ribbons?
Yeah, you pay 2 mana to kill something, and then you just kill your opponent much later in the game. Yeah. Or not that later, depending on where it is. So.
All right, A for Cut to Ribbons. Really good card. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that if you can't play Ribbons, still play Cut. It's still like a B+, A- level removal spell just for the efficiency of it. And every red deck should always have Cut in it, even if they're red-green or some color that can't cast Ribbons. Last Aftermath card is Heaven to Earth. So Heaven is X green, instant, and it does X damage to each creature with flying. Ugh. Okay, well, let's look at Earth before we judge. So Earth is red X, and it says Earth deals X damage to each creature without flying. What a weird little card, right? Like you could pay the green, just get it into your graveyard if you're planning on casting the Earth side anyway. It's not like you have to, you don't have to cast it for value. You can just play green and just put it in your graveyard and then untap and be like Earth and, try to wrath them or whatever. It doesn't deal damage to players. I think a lot of old school players will see this and think of Earthquake, which it's not.
It's funny because Heaven's also an instant, so you can end of turn. They don't see it coming. You just end of turn go, pew, Heaven for 0, untap, Earth for 4. Or something.
Right. How good is that, though? I mean, Earth also is red X, so it is kind of tough to do it for, even like 4 costs a full 6 mana. It seems powerful to me, though. Like if you're playing a token deck and you just, if you're red-green and you just go Heaven on your end step, untap, Earth for 2, now we're talking about, Rags to Riches or whatever. That type of card.
Yeah.
This is a really hard card to judge. You need to be green to get into your yard, too.
So this is one of those cards you need to be red-green. Otherwise, it's just a green sideboard card that we're just going to give a sideboard, B or whatever.
Yeah, sideboard B, right.
But if you're red-green, I think this card's quite good because it's just not that hard to maneuver into a situation where it's just advantageous for you. And worst comes to worst, you just blow up the world and kill everything. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a B.
Okay, I like B. Also, you can just
get powerful cards. Yeah,
you can also just get a creature with Heaven, and you're pretty happy with that too.
Yeah,
one flyer, just kill it. All right, we'll go B on Heaven Earth. What a weird card. All right, we've got artifacts and a couple of lands, and then we are done with this thing. Let's see what we've got for artifacts here. Well, there's only 3 of them. The first one is called Oracle's Vault, and it is 4 mana for an artifact. It's rare. In fact, all 3 of these are rare. And you can pay 2 mana and tap it. Exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may, this is a keyword, play that card. Put a brick counter on Oracle's Vault. So of note here, you can play lands off of it if you haven't played a land for the turn. That's the difference between play and cast is a important one for that. Of course, you can also just cast the card if you have the mana to cast it. Right. Then it's also got an extra ability, tap it. Exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Activate this ability only if there are 3 or more brick counters on Oracle's Vault. I like this card a lot, Luis.
Yes, I think the card is great.
I do too.
It is slow.
It is a little slow.
This is not a very good card to cast on turn 4. This is a pretty good card to cast on turn 7.
Dude, I like playing it on 4. Look,
and then just hoping to hit lands and 2 drops over the
No, I'm going to 3 drops. Like
Okay.
It is. Look, here's the thing. So you play Oracle's Vault, you say go. On your turn, you untap, you keep a land in your hand. Let's say if you have an extra one. You pay 2, you tap the thing. If it's a land, you play it. You've got 3 lands, and now you can cast a 3-drop, a 2-drop, or a 1-drop from your deck. If you hit a 1-drop, 2-drop, or 3-drop from your deck, you can play a land from your hand and then play that. So you're not just getting stone ran over here, right? And now you've already got 1 brick counter on the thing. The next turn, assuming that you hit that land drop, opens you up to casting 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s from your library, in which case you're not really that far off, anyway, and there's not a lot of misses in most limited decks at that point. And then the next time you do it, you're getting the 3rd brick counter, and of course you're off to the races after that. And then like you said, I mean, if you find it later in the game too, you open up your percentage of hits to most of your deck the first time that you activate it. It's just slower. I put a little more emphasis on getting the brick counters going, because once you start tapping this every turn, it's just absurd. I mean, you're just drawing 2 cards a turn and you get to play one of them for free.
Yeah, I think that it's the kind of engine that will win you the game by itself as long as you don't die. It's similar to Bounty of the Luxa, except that you have to wait a little longer to get the free mana, but once you start getting the free mana, you get the card and the mana every single turn.
Exactly.
I think that Bounty of the Luxa is actually a slightly better card, though. It's a lot less finicky. Like, you know how you were talking about you want to play this on turn 4 and hit a 3-drop? If you hit the wrong... If you hit the wrong, or a land, yes, all those things. But if you hit the wrong cards with this, it can end up being pretty awkward.
Yeah, it can. I mean, my thinking on it is just that, like I said, like if you untap, you activate it, you don't hit let's say you hit a 4-drop, right? You can still go land 3-drop from your hand if you have those things, or land 2-drop or whatever, Like you have to have a pretty specific set of circumstances happen where you just activate this and just do nothing for the turn,
Yeah, I guess that you're not going to miss all that often.
Right. I mean, not that you're doing great things, but that you're at least still doing something.
You're also going to be hitting suboptimal things, right? If you're on turn 5 playing 2-drops.
True. So I
think this card's going to have. Obviously, it has a lot of variance built into it.
Yes.
I also think that you're going to run into matchups where you're like, well, I have to side out Oracle's Vault. They're just playing a bunch of 2-drops.
I agree. I think that it can be too slow to play. I think it's a B. I think this card's really good. It gives you inevitability. The thing I hate so far, though, is that there are 3 what we would normally consider sideboard cards that blow this thing up that all have cycling in this set. So you want to invest some mana and some brick counters into your Oracle's Vault? Well, it can all go horribly awry for you with any number of different cards that people either may have in their main deck or may just bring in for little to no downside, where if you have the vault, they blow it up, and if you don't, then they just cycle the card. That part I don't like very much because of the investment you have to put in. I don't know if that changes the grade a lot, though.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on it than you. Maybe that you're just going to, hit 2-drops when you need to hit 2-drops. I think it's a B-.
Okay, so I go.
I'm not a lot lower on it. I just don't have maybe quite that same optimistic view.
All right. Oracle's Vault gets a B for me, B- from Luis. Pyramid of the Pantheon. Yeah. Adam just calls this Soul Ring. He also doesn't really know what Soul Ring does. But
it's a 1-mana. It's a reverse Soul Ring. It's a 1-mana rare. 2 tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Put a brick counter on Pyramid of the Pantheon. Tap, add 3 mana of any color to your mana pool. You only if there are 3 or more brick counters on Pyramid of the Pantheon. Basically, you spend 3 turns losing a mana, and then it becomes a Gilded Lotus. Yeah. So I'm off this. I don't think Pyramid of the Pantheon's good.
No, me neither. I think it's an F. I'm not going to put it in my deck. Throne of the God Pharaoh. Is this a card we were looking for before?
No, that's Gift of the God Pharaoh.
Okay. What does this do? That stupid lost card that we spent. Anyway, go on.
This is 2 mana. It's a rare legendary artifact. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. So, I don't think that this card's particularly good. Basically, you have to have a bunch of creatures beating them down and...
Not dying.
Yeah, not dying. And that once you're in that place, making them lose 3 life is just not that good.
Right. If you had ways to tap your creatures without attacking, it could be kind of good, but I can't think of any just off the top of my head. This isn't a Convoke set or whatever. It's not like you're just going to have a bunch of tapped creatures. Plus, it's the beginning of your end step, so then those creatures would no longer be able to block. Yeah, this card seems actually quite bad to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's remotely playable.
Also, horrifically bad when you're behind, which is another big knock on cards like this. So, really aggressive only. Throne of the God Pharaoh, I don't think I'm going to give it a D just because I haven't seen it yet, and maybe it's a little better than I think. But my initial grade would be an F, but I'm just going to give it a D.
I think Throne of the God Pharaoh is an F. I just don't think you're ever going to put this card in your deck.
Luis taking a stand. I like it.
Well, it just does not seem good. Like it
seems really bad.
It's just classic Winmores. Like you can't even make the all-out Alpha Strike to like make them lose 5 life because they'll just block and kill all your creatures.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really bad. And then you don't have tap creatures on your end. Yeah, okay, I get you. All right, F. you talked me into it. All right, that moves us to our lands, and these are the last ones. We've got one cycle of 5 cards, which we'll cover all at once. This is, of course, the cycle land. So Canyon Slough, Fetid Pools, Irrigated Farmland, Sheltered Thicket, and I'm sure there's some other one here that I can't find. But anyway, they enter the battlefield tapped. They tap for 2 different colors of mana. It looks like these are the allied pairs. And then they also cycle for 2. And incidentally, they are swamps and mountains and plains and islands. I don't think that's going to pop up in limited too much. But yeah, so dual lands that cycle. The big question here, Luis, is we know these are good, right? I mean, these are just powerful cards because everybody's flooded out in limited before where you just keep drawing lands. You're like, ugh. These ones actually, you can pitch them and get a real card back out of it. The question is, where do you pick them? Like, we know that these are something that you want in your deck, assuming that you need both of the colors. But like, where do you actually take these cards? How good are they?
I think they're better than like average playables. Like that puts them into like C plus B minus range.
Okay.
If you're both colors, they're great. If you're one color, they're still good. Like I'm gonna play Canyon Slough, the red-black one, in like a white-red deck. Just
yes.
And in a battlefield tap, cycling 2 is still just very good.
What if, okay, here's a question. Let's say you're playing green-red, okay, and you're splashing for a couple of black cards, removal spell or whatever. Does that make this, like, where does that put you on this? Because cycling it away, could have dire consequences if you find your black spells later. Are you less likely to cycle it? Because it makes it, let's say you've got 3 sources in your deck. This is one of them. You haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I'm less likely to cycle it at that point.
Okay. That's interesting just to like think of the different scenarios in which you're running it. All right, so we'll go C+ on these though. Does that seem fair to you?
I think they're C+, but once you have enough playables, they go up because they just don't take up a playable slot and they make your deck a significant amount better.
All right. That leaves us with one last card. It's called Cascading Cataracts, and it's a land at rare. It's indestructible. Doesn't come up in limited too often, but kind of cool.
Not so much now.
Yeah, taps to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. Or you can pay 5 mana, tap it, and add 5 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. Does this make you dream, Luis?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to put this card in my deck, but it does have some cool moments, I guess, associated with it.
Yeah, I guess so too. I don't
also,
think
it's indestructible.
Yeah, we saw that. Really important. I don't think I'm going to put it in my deck either. I would give it like a D- just in case. I don't really know. I'm sure I'll have some deck with it at some point, but I'm also sure that I shouldn't.
I don't think I'm ever going to play it.
You're going to give it an F?
You don't have to be 5 colors.
It's indestructible.
I guess if you're 3 colors, it's actually okay, right?
Sure.
Like you would not play it in a 2-color deck. So no. Yeah, I'll give it a D.
I mean, it still sets you back a mana to activate it. It's like the biggest painted bluffs ever, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I mean, the fixing in this set is pretty bad. There's just like evolving wilds, basically. So
what? In green, there's a bunch. Other colors.
Well, sure, in green there is, but even then, green is pretty light on it because the green fixing is just not good.
Yeah.
But
this does combo with the 2-drop.
Yes.
Right? Reflecting Pool Guide works with this.
Naga
right?
Vitalist works with this, yes.
Okay. Anyway, whatever. I'll go D- on Cascading Cataracts because I want to live the dream of playing that at some point and actually doing things with it. All right, that's it. That is all she wrote for the Rares and Mythic Rare. Some powerful stuff in this set, though.
Oh,
goodness
man.
sakes.
I'm so mad about Glorybringer. Like, come on.
It's stupid. At least it dies to Electrify, right?
I guess that's true, but it's already killed one of your creatures at that point.
You can still... It's instant. They're like, play this, go to combat. You're like, kill it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if they left mana up, but even then, you don't play Glorybringer to open mana all that often. The card is just too absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some scary stuff for sure. The Archfiend. What was the other third? So you had Archfiend, Glorybringer, and what was the other card you had in mind for best card?
What was the other card I had in mind? Oh, Cut to Ribbons. I think we're to 3. Or no, Angel of Sanctimony. Sorry,
yeah,
Angel of Sanctions. Yeah. I have it Glorybringer, Angel, or Archdemon. Or Angel of Sanctions, then Archdemon, then Cut to Ribbons, I think are the ones I like in that order. But
those are all absurd.
They're all just obscene. So.
2 of those are rare, by the way. That's kind of insane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is going to do it. Hopefully, this is helpful for you as you work your way into the set with Luis and I. Of course, we'll be bringing you initial impressions and tales from the Pro Tour in the coming weeks, as we always do, to keep you up to date on the draft format as it evolves, as we learn, as we gather information. And we certainly encourage you to do the same thing. I want to mention our sponsor, channelfireball.com, one more time. Make sure that if you need to pre-order Amonkhet, that's where to go. Channelfireball.com. You can order singles, sealed product, whatever it is that you need from Amonkhet, you can get it. You can even get invocations, which I opened one of, by the way, and they're really cool in real life. I was like not super impressed by them when I saw them on the internet. I thought, they're okay. But when I got one in my hands, I'm like, oh, this is actually really cool. Now I kind of want a bunch of them. So now I'm going to just, try to open more in my decks. But of course, you can just buy them straight away from Channel Fireball if you are interested in such things. If you want to find us on social media, it's easy to do. I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. Everything related to the podcast is at lrcast.com, including every episode ever. You can just go back through time and listen to any episode we've ever done. The whole archive is there for your listening pleasure, as well as a list of links on the front page for anything related to us, including streams, YouTube channel, Facebook page. I do a visual version of this set review for this one and for the last one. If you want to see pictures of the cards while we go through them, YouTube channel. For limited resources, I put them up, and you can read the cards and get used to the images. For people that are visual learners, they find that useful as well. And I put those up with every set review as well. Thanks to the Patreon. Thanks again to our patrons. Okay, that's going to do it for this one. We will see you next week with Amonkhet initial impressions.
So I want to go over some commonly misunderstood concepts here. This actually almost made it into the show, or maybe a future show, but I think there's enough nonsense here that we won't. I won't feel bad not doing the full explanation. But
okay.
This is the first word is something that you hear a lot in both sports broadcasts and Magic, also broadcasts, that makes no sense. It's momentum.
Oh, so, momentum, yeah.
Yeah, it's our favorite. People. So here, the thing is, with a couple of these concepts, there's both true and false to them. I just think it's very interesting examining what is true and what is false. Here's what's false. Momentum is not a thing. Someone winning a tournament or being on a win streak, that does not make them more likely intrinsically to win their next matches or to make their next shot. Like hot streaks and lucky streaks are just not real. And they're over-identified. People always think like, he just won that GP. He's got momentum.
Yes, that is the thing that is not. It's funny because they do exist, right? Streaks happen. They just don't serve as a predictor of future events.
Right. Yes, you can look back and say like this person won 85% of their matches over this 2-month period. Yes, that's a streak, but that doesn't mean that they're going to continue doing that.
Right.
So what's true though is confidence is real, and what used to be called the Finkel fear factor, because John Finkel, the best player of all time, opponents would play poorly against him. Or they'll play like you always have it. Those things are real. But they get confused with momentum. So it is true that someone winning a lot does make them win more, but momentum is not a good way to describe that. And it's not something unexplainable. There's not this intangible quality of like, they built up a lot of momentum. They've done well recently. So they're on a hot streak. Raptor won GP Vancouver. So when he won the Magic Online Championships 2 weeks later, it was because of momentum.
He was riding the wave. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like
that does not exist. Yeah.
Your luck doesn't cluster. Getting lucky in one tournament doesn't make you more likely to get lucky in another. On the other hand, playing like you have and having your opponents respect that is real, and you are more likely to play that way when you're winning.
I'm real curious before we go to the next one. Have you experienced the Finkel fear factor?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've definitely played against people who played horribly against me because they thought I would always have it, or they played differently than they normally would because they were playing against me, and this is just very true.
Yeah, okay.
wanting it more. That's another thing that people will say when someone starts winning. Oh yeah, they wanted it more.
Oh yeah. They dug deep.
They haven't been trying hard, but now they're trying really hard.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. It's not real to want it more if you're playing your best. Like, it's not real that there's like this intangible thing of like, yeah, he tried his hardest and that's why he won. Or, she really wanted to win that tournament. That's why she won. Basically, if that is real, it's because once you get it a little too far, that's actually what cheating is.
You wanted it a little too much, yeah.
You're starting to do things you're not supposed to do. But in general, I assume people are doing a good job of playing their best. There's no like, they can't try twice as hard and get twice the results. Like that is not a thing. What is true is not giving up, playing to your outs, and actually playing your best. These are true things, but again, people overstate the psychological, they really wanted it this time. That's why they were able to win.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add about this that I do find interesting is that within the context of a tournament, it's wanting it more doesn't really apply.
Yeah.
Outside of that, it does. And what I mean by that is, if you prepare harder, like think of what Owen Turtenwald does to prepare for a tournament versus random, say, gold pro who kind of, likes Magic a lot, but maybe, has a full-time career or some other obligations or whatever that keep them from really playing that much. Owen will put in 10 hours a day on Magic Online, grinding out a matchup, figuring out how to do it. He does want to win more than that other person, right? I mean, or that other person decides that they prioritize other things. It's just that when you actually get to the tournament, especially for mental things like this, there's not a lot of hustle. Not a lot of hustle plays in Magic, as it turns out.
No, there really isn't. So you can't exert yourself to do, get an extra match win per tournament, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and then the last thing I want to talk about is the commonly, this is the best X player in the world at playing White Weenie or playing aggro or playing control. This person's always great at drafting aggressive decks, or this person's a control specialist. So here's the part here that's false, is that it is optimal strategy to do this. It is not optimal strategy to do this. That is not true. The best players, the actual best players, draft whatever is open in that draft or play whatever the right constructed deck is for that tournament. What is true, the reason that this gets conflated often is it can be good to get an edge by just always playing White Weenie in every tournament. When it's bad, you do bad, but when it's good, maybe you do well. Like, you'll never miss White Weenie being good if you ever always played in every single tournament. Like, if you say that 1 out of every 7 tournaments White Weenie is good, it's the best choice, well, you're not going to miss it because you've played it every time. Similarly, if you always force blue-black cycling in Amonkhet, when the deck's not open, you're not going to have a good deck, but when it is, you're going to have a great deck because you're going to get there even before a good quote-unquote drafter would know to go into that deck. Mm-hmm. So that's not optimal strategy. We do not espouse that, but there is some truth to it, and it's just funny that some people think that that's the best affinity player in the world. It's like, no, the best player in the world is the best affinity player in the world. That person just always plays affinity, so people over-identify how good they are at affinity. And that's just not how it works.